I became the antagonist in my stepsister's drama, after refusing to cut my brothers out of my life, as she had demanded on her birthday. Out of my 4 siblings, I, 18F, am the youngest. Chris, 25 million, John, 27 million, and Michael, 28 million, are my 3 older brothers. My father, 53 million, and my brothers have been quite protective of me ever since our mother died when I was 8 years old. Among other things, I had movie nights with my brothers and father-daughter date nights with my dad. I believe they did that to ensure I didn't feel alone. My father married Melissa, 45 degrees Fahrenheit, last year. She moved in with us along with her 18-foot-plus daughter Ashley. I always felt that I was disliked by Ashley. She would converse with my brothers and father, but never with me. She would give me a brusque response and then turn away if I attempted to speak with her. After a few weeks of unsuccessfully attempting to get along with her, I gave up, even though I never understood why or whether I had done something to her. It was sufficient that we treated each other with civility. My brothers had conflicting feelings about her as well. She insisted on attending our movie nights, but even if none of us were interested, she would always insist on seeing a film she enjoyed. Additionally, she persisted in attempting to cuddle with my brothers, which made them uneasy and strange as they didn't know her well. Because he didn't enjoy how touchy she was with him, Chris actually told her to stop. I recently turned 18. It was low-key and enjoyable, and I got some amazing presents. Ashley approached me the following day and complained that it was unjust because my brother's birthday presents to me were superior to those they gave her in June of last year. Since my brothers didn't really know her, they each gave her a $200 gift card to a different store so she could purchase the things she loved. To be polite, they handed her presents. My brothers sent me a personalized planner with quotes and messages on every page, a signed copy of a whole book series I've been infatuated with, and a personalized perfume. Since they don't truly know her, I think it's reasonable that they give my gifts more thought. Ashley broke down in tears as she said, "I always get everything, and she get nothing." Then she insisted that I quit spending time with my brothers, saying that they would give her more attention if I did. She also asked me to inform them that since she was now their sister, they should treat her the same way they treated me. I assured her that I wouldn't make my brothers do anything against their will. She demanded that I call my brothers at that very moment to inform them that I would be spending less time with them and that they were to get her better presents. I declined. She must have told her friends and cousins since I've been receiving letters from them accusing me of being a pampered, self-centered child. I'm questioning myself now. Recent update. Your recommendations and counsel are much valued. In case you missed it, I alerted my father and brothers about Ashley's actions. I did mention this in the comments. According to my father, they would speak with Ashley after he spoke with Melissa. We all spoke the following day. Ashley didn't deny anything, despite what we believed. At this point, she sounded like a broken record as she simply reiterated everything she had told me. Because my boys and I were so close, my dad acknowledged that she might feel alienated, but he said it was inappropriate for her to harass me through her friends and family and demand that I spend less time with them. Melissa began to express regret for Ashley's actions. Ashley was simply struggling with the changes in her life, so she stated she hoped we could all forgive her even though she knew it was wrong. They did initially want a positive relationship with her, Michael said, but she could forget it if this was how she was going to treat me. My brothers also talked about how her being so touchy with them made them feel uneasy. When my father proposed therapy, Ashley screamed and refused. I believe my father had had enough at this point. He threatened to evict her from his home unless she resolved her problems and went to therapy. We all stopped talking after that. My dad responded in the affirmative when Melissa inquired if he was serious. He claimed to love her and care about Ashley, but he wouldn't tolerate bullying of his daughter in his own home. Ashley had a surprised expression. This must have been quite upsetting to her because she was going to attend a nearby college and stay at home to save money on rent. She began accusing me, approaching me, and even attempting to seize me. My brothers all stepped in between us right away. John told her icily that even if her father was attempting to be nice, he would not act in that way. He went on to say that he would put her in jail before she could blink if she touched me. As an attorney, John made it apparent that this was no mere threat. Ashley took a step back and shut the door behind her as she made her way to her room. Ashley attended therapy the following day. At least she is leaving, even though I'm not sure if Melissa coerced her or if she didn't want to be expelled. I don't mind at all that she has been ignoring us for the past few days. Ashley began playing the sympathy card by texting my brothers the day she began therapy. They all obstructed her. I'm doing fine, personally. Everyone kind of forgot that I'm leaving for college in a few days because of this whole situation. My father and brothers are currently behaving irrationally and like mother hens. LOL. Update 2. To put things in perspective, I am the youngest of 4 siblings, 18F. Chris, 25 million, John, 27 million, and Michael, 28 million, are my 3 brothers. When I was 8 years old, our mother died. My dad, 53 million, married Melissa, 45F last year, and she moved in with her daughter Ashley, 18F, from a previous marriage. I wrote about Ashley hysterically making me quit spending time with my brothers because she wanted them to give her more attention barely a month ago. She constantly accused me of keeping her from connecting with my brothers and blamed me for everything. We all took a seat and spoke. I went to college, and Ashley went to treatment. However, I am aware that she still hates me. The present problem: I turned 18 a little more than a month ago. I received a pair of diamond earrings from my maternal grandparents as a family treasure. My mother used to own them, but she was unable to give them to me, so my grandma kept them until I became 18. In my room, I store them in a closed drawer. Melissa and Ashley attended a wedding yesterday. Melissa posted on Facebook, so I knew. Until I noticed Ashley wearing a pair of earrings that I recognized from one of her articles, I didn't give it much thought. I knew right away that those were my earrings, even though I know it's wrong to make accusations without evidence. I notified my father and brothers over the phone before leaving for home. Melissa didn't trust me when I contacted her to explain the problem because Ashley had informed her that she had borrowed the earrings from a friend. Upon arriving home, I discovered that the earrings were gone and the drawer had been broken. We looked at the hallway security camera. I had one placed due to past incidents, and it captured Ashley entering my room and exiting a short while later. I was in a panic. Ashley received a call from my dad demanding that she return my earrings. At first, she denied everything, but when he revealed that we had video footage, she defended herself by claiming that I wasn't using them and that she had simply borrowed them. My dad was then barred by her. Melissa was also not picking up her phone. I was considering going to the wedding right away when my brothers, who were really tired of Ashley, proposed that we go to the police station and report her for stealing. At first, I was hesitant, but then I recalled that Ashley had stolen these earrings without my consent, which my mother had left for me. We displayed the security film, filed a report, and went to the station. Ashley was brought to the police station this morning to be questioned. Melissa and she remain at the station. Ashley's family has been calling and texting me to accuse me of being dramatic and embarrassing their family because a lot of the wedding guests witnessed the police officers. Update 3. I had no intention of updating after my initial post was locked, but I got a ton of messages requesting one and advising me to update my profile. Here it is. If you're still reading this, please be prepared for a lengthy read because a lot happened. Let me start by answering the question that has been on everyone's mind. I did receive my earrings back. Their current location is far safer. Second, my brother handled most of the legal technicalities, so I am not fully aware of them, but these are the specifics. The price of the earrings is high. Ashley was in a lot of trouble because my grandparents apparently got them certified and had all the paperwork. Ashley was kicking and screaming the entire time, according to my father, who was at the station. She initially insisted that she had borrowed the earrings from a friend, but the police later showed her the video proof. Furthermore, she was unable to identify the acquaintance from whom she allegedly stole them. To exacerbate the situation, she was carrying the earrings in a customized, engraved box. As my father related, Ashley reportedly attempted to flee while the authorities were speaking to her and even bit the officer who attempted to stop her. She was consequently forced to stay the night in the holding cell at the station until she made amends. Admittedly, I found this to be quite entertaining. Yes, it's wrong to make fun of other people's poor luck, but I'm just a human. My dad's wife, Melissa, expressed her deep disappointment in all of us. She acknowledged that Ashley's actions were in a gray area, but she claimed we could have waited for her to return and avoided making things more serious. She halted the call and stopped answering her phone that evening when my oldest brother asked her why she didn't want the situation to get out of hand. Despite her inability to respond, she insisted that we make considerations for family. Melissa went on to say that diamonds should be worn rather than kept in a drawer and that Ashley looked lovely in the earrings. This makes me think that she was aware Ashley had stolen my earrings from the beginning and just allowed it to happen. Unfortunately, I can't demonstrate this. Melissa and my dad are divorcing. I hope this is resolved quickly because I don't think she's receiving much because they have a prenuptial agreement. Ashley, on the other hand, has been sending me nasty messages, just her standard fare. Although I don't read the messages, I haven't blocked her. Since we all think she would try to get in touch with us again, we want to use this as proof for a restraining order against her. They have left the house as of right now. Melissa is still pleading with my dad to change his mind. Dad stated that his children must always come first and that he cannot allow a thief to live in his home. He believes that Ashley poses a threat to my brothers and me. My brothers and I have blocked Melissa after she attempted to get in touch with us. I genuinely hope that this whole situation is ending because it has turned into quite a spectacle. I hope this is my final post on this site. I sincerely appreciate all of the people who have messaged and left comments inquiring about my well-being. Thank you so much for all of the best wishes and advice. I really appreciate it. Edit. I got several replies inquiring as to whether Ashley was unaware that the hallway was being filmed. It's possible that I never informed her outright, hey, there's a security camera in here. But since they are visible and not concealed, I fail to see how anyone could confuse them for anything else. Some also questioned why the security camera was installed in the first place. Our neighborhood was the scene of several crimes a few years ago. I was frequently by myself at home at this time, from the moment I got home from school until my dad returned home from work. The house was equipped with security cameras since my father and brothers were too cautious. They were never removed. Many Reddit users messaged me after my first post, warning me to exercise caution since Ashley might try to take anything. They were correct though, so I made sure to confirm that the cameras were operational. Cousin called me at midnight to babysit her grown kids. I said no, chaos followed, and now I have a restraining order. Even though I hardly knew her or her adult children, I declined my cousin's midnight call asking me to watch them. I have my own life, work full-time, and am 28. Being 28, you know. Naturally, that is irrelevant because it seems that I should always schedule time for my family. I know maybe 7% of them by name and 15% of them by face, but let's overlook that. I'm sorry, but someone is sure to get bogged down in the details with the 400 Mildreds, 250 Lindas, and 800 Stephanies, Chelseas, and Janets I see once every full planetary alignment. Naturally, when my parents, grandma, and siblings are all free, I make time for them. Being the youngest of 3, I work at the most forgiving job, even though it's not that bad. I also schedule time for other people I see on a regular basis. Well, let's get back to the funeral. Throughout the pre-ceremonial event, I kept getting the question, do you remember me? And, are you aware of my identity? To prevent any discomfort, I responded yes, yes, and yes. It's been a long time. One of my cousins, of whom I have no recollection but who evidently speaks to my mom on a daily basis, approached me during that time and introduced me to her children. We said hello to each other. According to their mother, they had been eagerly awaiting my arrival and appeared ecstatic to meet me. What the expletive? Was the first thing that came to me, but I ignored it because I wasn't in the right frame of mind. My cousin informed me that her children were in my state, around 40 minutes away from my home, and that they were roughly my age. I thought, oh, that's awesome. But I didn't give a damn. She said she would discuss it with my mother and proposed a little gathering later this year. Yes, all right. I took it as a cool, I don't have to worry about it, and went on, even though I'm not 14 anymore and don't need permission to do anything. Let's travel ahead to roughly 45 minutes. I receive a call at around midnight from a number located in the city where the majority of my family resides. Furthermore, the location is quite specific, too specific to be spam. I panicked, of course. My late grandfather was only a few years older than my grandma, who was down there at the time. Call me suspicious. I picked up the phone. Hi, name. It's your relative. How are you? My thoughts are, who the expletive? However, I answered, hey, what's up, is everything all right? Yes, she responded, as if perplexed by my inquiry. Everything is all right, just checking in to see when you're free to get lunch this weekend with her children's names. I felt like that meme with all the mathematics going about after I eventually figured out who this was. This woman couldn't have contacted me at almost midnight to arrange her expletive playdate. I'm sorry, what? I said. Remember at the funeral? She said. We discussed getting together later with you and kids' names. In addition to son's name, applying to university, daughter's name is transferring there for her junior year. I was thinking that we could meet after their Saturday morning tour, and you could take them out to lunch. Alcohol is just nowhere. Son's name is just 18. Hold on. What? She claimed they were about my age, but her son is incapable of drinking, as I clearly recall. She then begins to babble about how her daughter, who is 22 years old and doesn't know what moderation means, isn't permitted to drink unless she or her husband are around. What on earth would a 28 almost 29-year-old have to discuss with an 18 and 22-year-old? Perhaps I'm the only one who thinks this. Don't use drugs, concentrate on your studies, and don't get anyone pregnant. What's the topic of discussion? In addition, I don't even know these individuals. I was gasping and squawking on the phone before I even realized it. It was not appreciated by my cousin. I muttered, "Yeah, I don't think so," but I was too busy laughing to hear what she was saying. "I don't get off until around 8 p.m. on Saturdays since I work a double shift." "Well, first of all, I don't know what's so funny about what I said," she shot back. "Additionally, you may simply have a wonderful supper or do something else." 8 p.m. It's not that late. I had lost all patience by now. "Ma'am, this isn't Star Trek, and I work about 40 minutes away. After an 11-hour shift, I'm not in the mood to babysit, and I won't be arriving home until about 9 o'clock. Although this is a college town, I can suggest a few places for you guys to check out on your own. There aren't many locations that don't serve alcohol. They do have other drinks, after all," she said. "Pardon me. I am aware that your mother did not teach you to treat others rudely, especially your relatives. I don't know you, dude. You're calling me at the most inconvenient time to arrange a get-together with your children, who are not my age, and I have no idea who you are. You're all young adults, girl. I cover the cost of my own health insurance. We are not alike. Do not call me again, please." After hanging up, I had a brief argument with my fiancée, who had been awakened by this absurdity. I'm not going to hear the end of this during regular waking hours, of course. In a subtle way, I hoped she would wake up and complain about me so my mother would scold her for phoning us at such an inappropriate hour. However, I am aware that my mother will point out that I should have been a bit more polite. To be honest, I believe I did okay by refraining from using profanity during the discussion. Perhaps I'm simply talking about my zero expletive tolerance. Update. It turns out that by making a joke about my cousin calling my mom to complain about me, I jinxed myself because she actually did just that. She awoke my hard-working, impoverished mother to spy on me. In my opinion, my mother is a complete gem, yet I have witnessed her attack others like a rogue chainsaw. Her charming fairy act wasn't a lie to me. Tinkerbell has a tendency to be petty. She mentioned that she said some words, which is her way of stating that she cursed, but she didn't tell me exactly what she said. After saying one sentence, she hung up. My mom contacted my cousin back to get the whole story when she had gotten up and had her coffee. She gave me a call at that point. My mom questioned me, "Did you make a Star Trek reference during a conversation with your cousin as to why you wouldn't be able to have dinner with her kids?" As soon as I answered, and I could tell she was struggling to maintain her composure while being a mother. Indeed, I did. Since I only have a car and still need to pay gas, she was giving the impression that I had a transporter in my pocket. Over the phone, I could definitely hear her trying not to laugh. "Honey, I don't think she gets your sense of humor." Well, that should come as no surprise given that we don't even know one another. At that moment, my mom burst out laughing so loudly that my dad could hear it from a different room. Through the speaker, I could hear him laughing. My mother didn't have the strength to tell me to apologize just yet, even though I know she wanted to. She advised me to wait till my cousin had calmed down a bit, but she would keep me updated. I was traveling to work at the time of this call, which is what nearly caused me to crash my car. I understand that what your cousin did was absurd, but do you think it was appropriate to laugh at her? My mother asked. I won't reveal precisely what Mom told me next, but it seems that in her initial outburst, she had come up with a rather colorful moniker for my cousin. The N-word appeared in the name, but don't worry, we're all black. I had never heard my mother use that word in my entire life. She was so furious that I'm shocked she was able to contact this woman back, much less engage in a normal discussion. Therefore, I believe it should be clear that nobody in this household should be concerned about my urinating. I'm a bundle of kittens in comparison to my mom when she's exhausted. Second update. From now on, I shall refer to her as this raccoon dog since I have officially had enough of her. Her name is in my contacts as well. Get ready to be as mistaken as I was if you believed that the entitlement and rudeness couldn't get much worse. I suppose I'm simply a expletive fool if you did believe that things might get worse. I decided to work on a new beer recipe I had developed since I had today off. So there I was, with my brew pot, in the kitchen. To put things in perspective, the first step in making beer at home is to prepare the wort, which is essentially your sugar water. In order to add malt extracts, the grains are first boiled in a kettle or stock pot, and then the heat is turned off. Before boiling the liquid once more, you must stir until the extracts dissolve. Hops are then added, adding a range of tastes and bitterness. In instance, I utilize several components that I produce myself during the initial boil, making my brews a little more complex. Because these materials take a long time to mature, I make sure not to squander any of it. Later on, this will be significant. The raccoon dog from hell called me while I was relaxing and doing my thing. My curiosity overcame me, and I answered after considering leaving her on voicemail. "Hey, Hi, this is RD. Oh, hello. What is going on? I wanted to express my regret for the other day. The time didn't even cross my mind. Usually, I stay up quite late talking to someone. Unable to relate. Yes, I do feel that. No worries. Internally fuming. So pay attention. I was hoping you would think twice about hanging out with blah and blah, even though I know we had a rough start. I know you were worried since you don't know each other, and they don't know anyone in that town. I understand. All I want is for them to be with someone they feel at ease with. Now, as I've stated in other remarks, I believe it to be very reasonable. She is their mother after all, and is presumably merely attempting to ensure that college is enjoyable for them. Personally, I detested attending classes and spending so much time with strangers. I took online classes and stayed at home since I didn't like the idea of mingling at college. I told her that I understood exactly where she was coming from. I appreciate your understanding. Now, your mother informed me that due to your job, these things must be planned for you in advance, RD said. Since we'll all be getting together anyhow, I was thinking about Thanksgiving or Christmas. Yes, of course. I don't see why not, as we'll all be at the same location anyhow. Excellent, many thanks. They will be quite thrilled. Fantastic. With a gentle click-clack, I put the brew kettle back on the hot stove and said, "Sounds good. Are you preparing a meal?" "Yes." "You can cook, don't you?" "What are you producing?" "I am brewing wort for a new recipe that I am experimenting with." "Wort? What is that?" "Oh, it's beer's sugar base." "I apologize, did you mention beer?" "Yes." "Are you brewing beer?" "Yes." "Oh, huh. Is your mom aware of what you're doing?" "I suppose so, since she knows I can make it." Awkward quiet. "I said beer, not cocaine, didn't you hear me?" "Are you also able to make that?" "No, you're acting like I'm breaking something," so I asked. "Well, I'm just worried about the potential impact that could have on the children. Perhaps don't bring that up when you're hanging around. I am already aware that certain conventional families may not find my interests and employment choice suitable. But I would be dishonest if I claimed that her reaction and treatment of something I'm really passionate about didn't make me feel a bit upset. Only because I was going to see them over the holidays, and since I don't really discuss my passions in front of my family out of respect and to prevent any drama, did I not decline the hangout and end the call at that moment. Therefore, it wouldn't have been a problem. I simply agreed and rolled my eyes. Fantastic. All right, the final item. I am aware that the neighborhood has a large number of affordable apartments and student housing. Therefore, I wanted to know which ones we ought to investigate that would be both close to the school and you. This is the point at which reality set in. To be honest, I smiled a little. Well, the rates are fairly reasonable for a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's about a 5 to 10 minute walk from the school. That's amazing. You two might live next door. Yes, regarding that. Actually, before the year ends, we will be relocating to the city where I work, which is over 40 minutes away, so we won't be in the area. Oh, hold on. I'm not really paying attention. Are you stating that you will not be able to visit them? Put Britney Spears' WTF expression here. Actually, no, not at all. We are moving closer to our employment so that we won't have to drive as far, which is the main goal. But you do it all the time, so I just don't understand why you couldn't go see them once or twice a week. Well, that would be really inconvenient for me. That doesn't seem very likely to me. Is spending a couple hours with your family inconvenient? Do you not make the extra drive to your parents' city? Yeah, but traffic is typically the cause. So, you go see them despite though you'll be even farther away when you move. I don't understand why it's so inconvenient for you to drive halfway to see your relatives, especially on days like today when you should be spending time with your family instead of creating booze. Simply put, I think your priorities are a little out of order. For the remainder of this talk, my brain decided that civility was unnecessary and pushed it into a locked closet, despite the fact that I have painfully and deliberately chosen my words throughout all of our conversations. I'm sorry, did you really just compare the level of importance between your kids, who I have said exactly 0 words to in my entire 28 years of life, to my parents? I exploded. All right, honey, let me start by saying that I have no idea to whom you are speaking. Once more, who the explicit are you? Again, what do I owe you? What time or portion of my day do you deserve to reclaim? Why have you returned to my life? If we hadn't crossed paths again, what would I miss? Oh, nothing, since I don't know you explicitly. Furthermore, I don't have an attic, so I don't care if you choose to move in. Years before I can even recall your explicit name, I'm going to visit my folks and deliver them all the homemade alcohol I desire. And explicit you for diverting my attention as my explicit word is now ruined due to my kettle boiling over. I nearly lost it when I heard my fiancé laugh out loud in the adjacent room, but that was in the heat of the moment. I sounded like an irate Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls, he said later. Since I was so focused on getting the sticky mess of my damaged mixture off my stove and floor before my cat could get to it, I honestly can't recall if she said anything else after that. I hung up after saying an irate "see you on Thanksgiving," which was all I could manage in my annoyance. Although I haven't heard from anybody else since, I'm quite certain that nobody will have the audacity to bring it up given how out of character that blow-up was for me. I don't get angry very often, so when I do, my parents usually just make sure I'm alright and prevent anyone from bringing it up later. I have to give my fiancé credit for making me laugh so fast at the absurd noise I made when I saw the pot boil over when he came to assist me clean up the mess. I asked him in jest if he believed I would be punished for that outburst. He claimed that he believes I frightened her enough to make her temporarily retreat to her trash den. Third update. I have had nothing to do at all for the first time since Thanksgiving. We appreciate everyone who took the time out of their day to read this, as it will be the final installment of this chaotic roller coaster. I'm glad I could keep you entertained. I know that most of you were anticipating some kind of media circus monstrosity family meal, but this is the moment you've all been waiting for. To be honest, so did I. However, this year, the goddess of chaos chose to be my best friend and made the holiday absolutely ideal for me. My family's Thanksgiving was cancelled. My fiancé and I had to work on Black Friday, my grandma stayed at home in remembrance of my grandfather, and my parents traveled to see my brother. Thus, we peacefully spent Thanksgiving at home. We watched a marathon of horror films while snuggled in our pajamas and enjoying a delectable supper and fantastic drinks that I had made. I was swooning over it like a fat cat in a tuna factory, and it was flawless. Then my phone rang, though. I choose to disregard the number because I didn't recognize it. They left a voicemail, but they could wait until tomorrow because I was on vacation for the holidays. Another call was received a few minutes later. The same figure. Then another. And yet another. And yet another. I was on the verge of enclosing my phone in a salt barrier in the hopes that it would deter this stalker. As the logical genius that he is, my fiancé recommended that I listen to the message, which I had entirely forgotten about. I turned it on so we could hear it. This is your landlord, SFM. Since the workplace is plainly closed, I'm using my personal phone. I apologize for disturbing your vacation, but I must have a call from you as soon as possible. You're probably wondering where the raccoon dog comes in, but I phoned her back in a panic because I had missed around 8 calls from this woman by this time. Oh baby, it's going to feel like Christmas. I don't have the entire discussion committed to memory, but I know I can get it very near. I remember what I said, and my landlord wasn't very professional throughout this call, don't judge, but I would have been furious too. I gave my landlord a call. Hey, she sounded as though she had discovered an entire turkey in the toilet. Hey, I'm so sorry, I didn't know this was you and I began. No, honey, I understand. Like everyone else, you were having a great time on vacation. Please don't even think about it. She cut me off. Here's a nervous laugh. So, what is going on? What's happening? Are you familiar with a woman named Raccoon Dog? She inquired. Her name was still a mystery to me, so I said, not off the top of my head, no. All right, so she's been berating our courteous cop for the last hour and a half and she knows you. She claimed that after you invited her children over, she is unable to contact you. Make sure that explicit didn't interpret my "see you on Thanksgiving" remark from our most recent phone conversation as an invitation to visit my house. I'm still having trouble connecting the dots at this point because I haven't spoken to this person in a month, and I was freaking out like a squirrel attempting to cross a busy street because my first thought when my landlord called me on her cell phone on Thanksgiving was eviction notice. I clarified that neither of us had invited anyone, thus I had no idea who this could be. See, that's what I thought, because you guys don't ever really have nobody around like that anyway, my landlord said, going into full nail salon black lady mode. Given that my fiancé and I are antisocial recluses, may my landlord rest in peace. The landlord went on. But she knows your identity, adding. And she has been requesting that we give her your room number without mentioning your fiancé. As in, really? No reputable business would simply divulge the information of its tenants in that manner. You would still be in violation of the law even if we did. What is she doing? I inquired. She parked in front of the fire zone with her kids in the car and is shouting police brutality because our courtesy officer gave her a fine and told her that if she doesn't move, we're going to have her car towed, stated my landlady. My apartment complex is very close to the university, and the main road leading to the separate properties is a frequently used route directly to many of the university buildings, as well as a third of the fraternities. They take this very, very, very seriously, and if there were a fire in that area, that section would most definitely be blocked off. Please note that the fine for parking in front of a fire zone here ranges from $500 to $2,000 depending on the location and severity of the situation. Did she relocate? I inquired. No, my landlord retorted. She threatened the courtesy officer after receiving a fine for the fire zone. Her children are still in the car, and he had to phone for assistance. My fiancée, seated next to me, burst out laughing like a crazy person as I cackled, clearly still in a panic because I still didn't know who this was. Yo, it's Raccoon Dog. My fiancé texted my mother. 55 what? What dog? My landlady interrupted. This poor woman sounded so defeated and worn out as she questioned, can you formally state that you didn't invite her and don't want her here? I told her everything from the beginning, and I could hear all the energy leave her body as she started laughing. This stunning woman said, okay, I got this expletive, in response to my confirmation. You guys have an incredibly nice Thanksgiving. We hung up. I couldn't stop thinking about this woman's children and how ashamed they must have been. I don't understand how I haven't heard from someone who has fled at this point. I was silently shocked, incredulous, and trying not to laugh. My fiancé clicked play on our movie and said, eat, watch. I honestly didn't know what to say, so I just followed his instructions, trying not to choke on my food from laughter. I tried to think of anything to say, but all I did was open my mouth before he stopped me with, nope, 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 nope. When I later learned that RD, Raccoon Dog, had gotten in touch with her, my mother threw the biggest fit, accusing me of lying to her about spending Thanksgiving with her children. It seems that during the same phone call where I yelled at her, she was fined $2,000 by the courtesy officer assigned by my landlord, and to make matters worse, her husband had to pay $3,500 to bail her out of jail and she was hit with an additional $7,500 fine for trespassing, resisting arrest, and threatening violence toward a police officer. Yes, I didn't even have to do anything, yet I am the expletive worst. It all began with a random unsolicited phone call in the middle of the night a couple of months ago, and I'm still struggling to put the situation into words and I'm trying to persuade myself that it really happened. The pièce de résistance. 2 days ago, her children created a group chat on one of my social media accounts with the three of us, apologizing for their crazy mother and all the crap she's said about me spending time with them. Did you think that was the best part? Number. They said that what happened on Thanksgiving was the last straw for them, even though they had been wanting to apologize on her behalf for some time but were so ashamed that they decided to just leave me alone. These kids spent most of their Thanksgiving sitting in a car in front of a random apartment complex, and then they sat in a police station for an indeterminate amount of time until their dad could come get them. They knew their mom would be in jail overnight, and that bailing her out would blow half their Christmas fund. Which, yeah, imagine spending Thanksgiving stuck in a spectacle of pure insanity, brought on by your delusional mother. There's a really great pizza place up the street, was all I could reply. I'm off next Friday, and it's on me. I'm not sure what your schedules look like. This weekend, I have a pizza date and a restraining order, a match made in heaven. This whole thing has been such a cluster expletive dumpster explosion, and I hope you all liked sitting in it with me as much as I enjoyed writing it. I skipped the family cruise. After being asked to buy my own ticket, now they're upset they can't reach me. For the holidays, my folks wanted to take a cruise. My brother, 28M, his girlfriend, 26F, my boyfriend, 27M, and I, 25F, were invited. The golden child has always been my brother, who we'll call James. Some background. When James was caught selling pills in high school, it was written off as just a phase. In the meantime, my parents threatened to expel me after I was found smoking marijuana. Despite dropping out of college 3 times and losing his scholarship, James is still seen as ideal. I was told I didn't put in enough effort when I graduated a semester late. I dwell in my home state, close to my parents, while James continues to reside in the place where he went to college. He doesn't go to school or work. My parents often purchase tickets for him to travel to see them, but they won't purchase a ticket for me to travel to see him or anywhere else. He recently purchased a $2,000 dog with the money they provide him for rent and other expenses. My parents promptly removed me from their insurance when I was 22 and got my first big job since I could receive benefits. James, meanwhile, continued to be covered by their insurance until his 26th birthday. I returned to living with my parents in order to save money after being laid off last year. My parents, who had never talked about it previously, insisted that I pay $10,000 in back rent when I started a new job. I recently moved in with my boyfriend after paying it off in the end. I've always had this pattern in my life. James gets everything while I have to put in a lot of effort. Let's go on the cruise now. My parents ordered tickets for James, his fiancée, and themselves after announcing their plans. They advised me to purchase my own ticket because I work at a well-paying job. Being the only one forced to purchase my own ticket infuriated me, so I told them it wasn't fair. Due to holiday arrangements with his family, my partner was unable to attend. My parents said, "Green doesn't look good on you," and accused me of being pampered. It's a phrase I'm so sick of hearing. It's not like you need a nice room because we'll be outside most of the time anyway, they continued. Perhaps that is the case, then why did James receive a good room? I informed them I was leaving because I had had enough. I may be the jerk here, though, because I gave them the impression that I was still going for months. They instructed me to arrive at their house by 8 a.m., the night before they were scheduled to depart so that we could begin the drive to the port at 8:30. They began messaging me the following morning, inquiring about my whereabouts. I responded to your SMS by saying, "I'll be at my boyfriend's Thanksgiving instead, since you didn't want to make the effort to have me join you. Enjoy your vacation with your beloved youngster." I then turned off the chat. I discussed this with a few friends. Some people thought it was rude to abruptly cancel, while others felt I should have accepted the situation and gone anyway, since I would have likely enjoyed myself once I was there. Now that they've been on the cruise for a few days, I'm beginning to feel bad about the way I handled things. It's not like I couldn't afford the ticket, so I'm sure I would have enjoyed myself. Additionally, I could have communicated my point more effectively. However, I'm also rather tired of their treating me in this manner. Is it my fault for calling off our family's vacation? Update 1. Of course, I'll start by paying the $10,000 in overdue rent. I didn't think the number was the problem. It's obviously a little higher than I would have preferred, but not unreasonably so given how long I stayed there. It's not as though I could have gotten a better deal on renting my own house. I would have spent all of my cash and most likely accrued debt while I was unemployed if I hadn't moved in with them. I worked as a server and did some freelance writing while I was searching for a new career in my profession, so I was helping to pay for groceries but not electricity or rent. As a result, when I found work again, I could see why my parents needed financial assistance. I only wish that expectation had been clearer from the start rather than being thrown at me as a surprise. I understood that having me stay for so long, especially while they were renovating their house, was inconvenient for them, so I paid for it. Pushing back didn't seem worthwhile. It just felt easier to pay the money, and I know that if I had refused, it would have become a major problem. Yes, it's likely that I need to work on my pushover tendencies. Fortunately, I work as a technical writer, which pays well, so after I started my new job, I was able to save money for a move out and pay my parents back in approximately 6 months. For those who are interested in the chronology, in January of last year, I lost my job. I moved in with my parents after using my money to cover my rent until my lease expired in June. From June of last year until September of this year, when I moved in with my partner, I lived with them. My parents informed me that they wanted back rent and future rent till I moved out when I started my present job in May. They claimed it was to encourage me to stand again. Technically, not all of it was back rent, but I used the term to be succinct. The entire sum came to $10,000 by the time I moved out, and I had already settled the majority of it. A few responses mentioned taking my parents to court, but I don't think that's worth it or even feasible. I didn't protest paying it, and we never had a formal contract. That wasn't something I wanted them to remember. Any legal matter would only rehash everything, and I would prefer not to do that. At least it's done now that it's paid. I'm aware that I should probably resist their demands more in the future. Since everything has been like way my entire life, it's just challenging. I've learned from my experiences that if I refuse, they would perceive me as unappreciative. I strive for perfection because all I want is for them to care for and support me in the same way that they do James. The worst thing is that I was quite close to James as a child. We spent a lot of time together as children. I was taught how to ride a bike by him. When I was being bullied, he defended me. He just never learned how to be independent, and I don't think that makes him a horrible person at all. He doesn't understand why I have problems with our parents, which has caused tension in our relationship. I miss playing RuneScape with my brother late at night. Since he has consistently received additional assistance, I'm rather certain he fully accepts the notion that he needs it. He has no idea what else to do or anticipate. He still treats me nicely, at least, but he doesn't recognize the difference in our treatment. In essence, he wants me to accept it and become a member of the family. Unfortunately, once it came to problems with our parents, all of his support simply vanished. One day, I hope, James will gain some distance from them so we can get back in touch. I do not wish for our relationship to continue to suffer as a result of this. I apologize for being so sentimental, but let's get back to the comments. I also saw that some people wanted to know why I hadn't informed them sooner that I was canceling. They would have spent those months attempting to get me to go and humiliating me if I persisted in refusing, but I see that was a petty move on my behalf. It looked like a lot of work, and my method was much simpler. I did receive some joy from it, albeit perhaps this is embarrassing of me. Treating them the same way they treat me was satisfying. Furthermore, it didn't really affect their trip. They traveled nonetheless, only without me. The idea of having little to no contact with my family was mentioned in a lot of the comments, and I've been thinking about it ever since. My boyfriend, who has witnessed my parents' behavior firsthand, supports this choice. If I tell my pals the whole tale, I'm sure they'll be on board as well. I've tried to avoid discussing the family dynamic with my friends since I find it depressing, and most of them have never met my parents. Additionally, I didn't want to come across as constantly complaining. They had only heard a few minor grievances here and there before. Having said that, the following is what has transpired since my last post. Late on Wednesday night, my boyfriend and I arrived at the cottage. His mother adored the bouquet I sent her, which included her favorite flowers. Before going to bed, we chatted with his family and had a small glass of wine. They didn't seem to mind that I wasn't as jovial as usual because I was still a little unsure about my choices. I promised myself that evening that I would ignore my personal family problems and concentrate solely on enjoying the trip with my boyfriend's family, who have always been so kind to me. We got up early on Thursday and assisted his mother in preparing various meals and arranging the table. After that, I played cornhole with his cousins, but we lost because I'm not that athletic. The actual Thanksgiving lunch was excellent. His mother cooks really well. I felt much better about choosing to spend the holidays with them because everyone was so kind to me and made me feel like a member of the family. His mother even told me at the conclusion of the evening that she hopes I will be able to live with the family someday, even though she knows it is ultimately up to my partner. We hugged after I assured her that I would be honored if that occurred. I sincerely hope it will. I want to be with my partner for the rest of my life since I love him so much. His family is an amazing benefit as well. Throughout Thanksgiving and the remainder of the weekend, I had a great time. We watched movies, played board games, hung out by the bonfire, and went on some amazing hikes. My partner also took care of his young nephew for a while. I definitely got a little baby fever from watching them play with Legos together, but I don't want to act on it for at least a few years. I've already missed everything since we returned yesterday afternoon. There was no family drama, which made my own family appear even more dysfunctional, and it was truly a blast. I feel like I'm babbling a little bit now. In all honesty, I probably have been, but I'm just so happy to convey how much fun I had during the holiday and how I made the correct choice. Regretfully, there are some negative aspects to this upgrade. I hope it is. Last night, my parents contacted me to express their continued dissatisfaction with my decision. I suppose they weren't sufficiently relaxed by the sea air and free beverages. Sad that you chose not to be with your family in such beautiful places, my dad wrote in a passive-aggressive text message that included cruise photos. It seems like you guys had a good time, I answered, sending back a photo from my trip with my boyfriend's family. We did too. My mother then called to express her sadness that I had spoiled their memories and missed out on a wonderful family holiday because of a small grievance against my brother. I informed her that their unjust preferential treatment of us was my problem, not James's. Since James needs help while he figures out his direction in life, and I've always been considerably more independent, my mother felt that I was being unjust by drawing comparisons between our circumstances. They never really let me rely on them, so that's the only reason that's true, I informed her. She stated that I should either grow up and be thankful for everything they have done or leave them alone for good and shatter their hearts all at once rather than piece by piece. She also said she would not apologize for raising a self-sufficient daughter. Even though they appeared to be doing just well without me based on the pictures my dad provided and what they shared on social media, she accused me of being heartless for dangling the hope of a wonderful holiday only to snatch it away at the last second. By this time, I was furious and gave her several examples of how they put James first in the hopes that she would finally realize how this upbringing has impacted me. Considering that I am childless and have never had to make difficult choices, my mother thought I had a lot of nerve to scrutinize their parenting. I guess I'll just leave you guys alone like you want since I'll never be enough for this family anyway, I remarked, tired of the conversation. As usual, my boyfriend provided me with a lot of support even though I ended the call crying. To lift my spirits, we watched The Hunger Games and ate ice cream for the remainder of the evening. I adore the series and can't wait for the new film to be out. After everything, it seemed weird to return to work today and pretend nothing had happened. However, I believe it served as a useful diversion as well. With the exception of last night's events, I actually returned from my vacation feeling more rested than I probably would have after the cruise because I had chosen my boyfriend's plans rather than my family's. Although my parents haven't responded to me yet, I suspect they're bluffing. They'll definitely get in touch if they need something, or they'll likely attempt to make things work out before Christmas, so they won't have to tell our wider family about it. I'm still not sure if I'll be amenable to making amends. Despite the fact that I have done so much for them, I know I deserve better than to be viewed as an afterthought and a burden. I'm fed up with trying to meet their standards, and I don't think their behavior will ever change. However, it's so hard to completely leave them because they are my family. All I want is to experience the same level of acceptance and affection from my own family as I do from my boyfriends. Why do they find it so difficult to treat me as though I'm important? Additionally, I'm afraid that if I don't be kind to them, they'll fabricate a tale to blame me, and my extended family will also be upset with me. Although my parents have a significant impact on everyone's viewpoints, there are some members of my family who I like. I'm not sure if it would be better to accept the loss and move on from a dynamic where I'm obviously not valued, or if it would be worth putting up with them in order to maintain some ties to my family. At the very least, I want to keep my brother, but perhaps I'm clinging to the past, and that James is no longer there. I hope that isn't the case. My parents have brainwashed him into believing they are infallible, so I'm not sure how to approach him. I doubt that I will ever be able to fully regain my brother. Right now, I have a lot on my mind, and I'm not sure if I'm prepared to make such a significant life change. I do think that if I at least kept my distance from them, or perhaps stopped talking to them completely, I would feel a lot lighter and more liberated. After 10 years together, I'm ending my relationship with the woman I love because she wants kids and I don't. Am I the asshole? Original post, I, 31M, have known her, 29F, since we were teenagers? We got together 10 years ago, and have been living together for a bit over 7. It's been the perfect relationship in pretty much every way. We support each other through everything, we have fun together, she's my best friend and I'm hers. We're as intensely in love as we've ever been. We've discussed marriage a bunch through the years. As of a few years ago it wasn't either of us cup of tea, but more recently she has expressed an interest in tying the knot. I don't really have an interest in marriage as a concept, but as I was intent on spending my life with her either way, if she needed a ring and a wedding I was more than willing to accommodate her. As of around half a year ago, I was in the planning stages of a proposal, and had even started to look for a ring. I didn't spoil the eventual surprise, but based on our conversations on the matter I don't think it would have been very unexpected to her if I'd popped the question. If anything, she must be wondering what's taking so long, at this point. But our desires for the future have diverged in another way, that I can't just compromise over. She wants to be a mother, and I don't want to be a father. Much like marriage, for much of our relationship she didn't have such a desire, but now she does. Unlike marriage, however, parenting is not just a symbolic thing I can accommodate her on. She didn't pressure me to change my mind, but she has tried to gauge whether there was wiggle room on my end, whether I could see my opinion on the matter change. I can't. At this point, she has accepted that. I could pop into a jewelry store tomorrow, pick out a ring, propose to her at the next opportunity. She would say yes and a while later we'd be married, still on our way to spending our lives together. Even though she knows we will not have children together. She may still hold out hope I'll change my mind. I can't know for certain either way, of course. I'd get to be with her probably forever, which is really all I want. But, she wants to be a mother. Not only has she expressed it to me, it has been painfully obvious in the way she is around our friends and relatives' babies and children, or in the way she awkwardly brushes off her mother's comments about waiting for grandchildren. It really is plain to see. I couldn't miss it if I tried and, trust me, for a while I did. So I have to let her go. Or, since she has not exactly been trying to leave me, I guess a more accurate way to phrase it is that I have to push her away. I have considered the other options. There's the selfish option, which really just involves staying with her, never giving her a child. I wouldn't even have to coerce her into this or lie about my stance on the subject, but every parent I've asked has gushed about parenting being the most fulfilling experience they've gone through. And for some of them I saw firsthand the exact same tells that they wanted to start a family that I now see with my girlfriend. I can't be the person taking that away from her. There's also a part of me that just fears she'd resent and leave me later on. Then there's the option of committing to eventually become a father, for her. Maybe someday I'd even be thankful I did it. For me, after all, some of the parents I've polled also said they weren't always keen to have children. Some still had doubts even while expecting, and yet it still ended up being that wonderful, fulfilling experience they all described. But even as I type this, Even as I try to convince myself I actually believe this, I just don't. And while I've asked for happy parents and healthy family units, there are also plenty of unhappy ones, or just shit ones, in this world. I think the least that every child deserves is to be wanted by both of their parents, and I can't see myself go through with this if there's even a chance that I won't meet even that very low bar. Even less so since I believe that chance to be quite high. I've pondered variations of those two main ones too. Waiting it out and hoping she changes her mind. Maybe being an aunt or a godmother, both are likely to happen within the next couple years, in the future can be enough, but they all seem like rolls of the dice, whose results will only be known years from now. When she expressed the desire to start a family, it was as a plan for a few years into the future. If that is to happen, without me, then I need to do this now. I've already procrastinated, simply pausing my plans for a proposal when I first realized how much she really wanted this, hoping a better answer would magically appear before me. But I can't just kick this can down the road forever. I've set the date, which is tomorrow. I will tell her I want to separate. I will tell her why as I have here. I have prepared myself in case she pushes back, tells me she doesn't want this, believes me to be lying about my reasons, pleads me to reconsider. I think my resolve is strong enough to hold no matter what she throws at me. I expect this to be a shock to her. As I said, she's likely to expect me to pop the question rather than to end things. I know I'm going to break her heart and I fucking hate myself for it. I'm also going to break mine, but I guess that's on me. I've already made plans for the aftermath. I know where I'll be staying for a short while after this, so I'll be out of her hair. I've laid out some options for longer-term living arrangements. I already know that everyone around us, my own family included, is gonna think I'm either an asshole or a complete moron. I doubt I'll get much in the way of empathy, but I also won't be looking for it. Can't plan for everything though. Figuring out how to live without her gonna be a bitch. Full transparency, I started writing this hoping I'd talk myself out of pulling that trigger. Hoping that typing it all out would reveal the magical answer I've been hoping for. But it hasn't. If anything, it has reinforced what I already knew. Edit. Some of you are pointing out that I'm taking a choice out of her hands when it should be her decision, or at least a joint one. I actually agree. But for months now I haven't been able to shake off the feeling that leaving that choice to her is in some ways cruel. Can you imagine leaving the one you love, shattering their heart? So you can then seek something they couldn't give you elsewhere. The only reason I can make that decision is because yes, I'll be hurting her, but in the hope that she gets something she wants, that I can't give her, out of it. If the roles were reversed I could never leave her for my own benefit. I know it's still unfair for me to just take away her agency in this. I feel shit about it. I feel shit about a ton of things right now. I'll feel even worse tomorrow. But I don't know what else I can do that doesn't force an impossible choice on her. Edit 2. So this got a wide range of responses. Some of you agree. Some of you think I should be more nuanced in my approach. Some are being really weird and trying to shove sexism into this, or making up fanfiction that twists this into me just looking for an excuse to break up with her. Some also are saying I should just force myself to have children, which I feel are the most bonkers takes. Lots of you are also saying I need a vasectomy. And yes, that is something I plan to do. Among the criticisms saying I shouldn't just make that decision, a lot of you are saying I need to clarify to her how certain I am that I don't want children. I did mention that, maybe I didn't make it clear enough, but that has already happened. She has talked to me about it, about whether there was any chance I'd change my mind. I have been as clear as I could have been that there was not. And she has accepted it and made her choice to stay with me despite that. These are things that have already happened. But despite making that choice, it has been clear, painfully so, that she still does want children. That is why I'm taking the decision out of her hands. Maybe I'm as dumb or as big an asshole as some of you are saying. Maybe I'm gonna ruin both our lives for no good reason. But there is no point at this stage in restating my stance and pawning the choice off on her again. I think the choice she made will make her unhappy in the long term, and I think I have to do what I'm going to do. There's nothing else to it. P.S. Do not expect or await any further update. Edit 3. In my second and last edit to the original post, I told people not to expect an update. Frankly, I didn't think I'd want to write one, nor did I really think I'd have anything much to say. Things didn't exactly work out how I thought and said they would, so here I am. I did approach her last Saturday. I expressed what had been troubling me and explained to her why I thought we should go our separate ways. As I thought it would, it came as a shock to her. She told me that while she had been wanting to start a family with me, she thought she'd made it clear that she'd chosen me over that prospect, fully aware it would not happen. She emphasized that the with me part was essential to her, that she couldn't picture it any other way. I told her that I was aware of the choice she'd made, but that I did not want to be the reason she'd miss out on being a parent. That while I'm sure she didn't make that call lightly, that I can tell she still wishes to have children. She did confirm that wasn't a desire that had just disappeared, that it was still there, and that while that's true I can only see her choice to stay with me leading to regret and resentment for her. I'm not gonna retell the whole discussion, those are the very rough broad strokes of both of our core positions, but it lasted hours, went through a range of arguments and emotions, cries on both sides, anger and distrust that I was being honest about my reasons on hers. I'd written in the original post that I thought I had the resolve to end things with her no matter what. As it turned out, maybe it came from a lack of resolve or maybe she just got through to me and it would have just been stubbornness not to listen. But at the end of it we agreed on just taking time apart from one another for the foreseeable future. On her part she promised me she would truly take that time to think about all of it. To re-examine her feelings in depth. On mine I committed to accepting her choice. The argument that convinced me was that this would be the first time in over a decade, the first time since we properly became adults, that we wouldn't be in each other's life, and that if the gain of perspective from being apart didn't change her mind, that had to mean something. Trying to see things rationally, I think the reasoning is sound. On a more emotional level, I cannot say I'm 100% certain I'm not just convincing myself of that, but overall I do think it's the way to go. The fact that, at this point, I don't know what she'll decide is one thing that makes me believe this was right. It also scares the shit out of me because, one of the two options is that I lose her. Might be dumb since I was ready to end it, but thinking about that prospect did and still does wreck me. Based on the responses I got last time, I'd wager many of you will think I was wrong to agree to this. Others advised exactly this, so maybe they'll be happy. Others, I'm sure, will still think I'm an asshole. Hopefully, this will turn out to be the right choice, whatever her decision ends up being. We have not set an exact time frame. I've asked that she take at least a few months as that sounds like a good minimum, and more importantly that she takes as long as she needs. We, obviously, won't be living together anymore. I'm currently staying at a hotel, but, her decision, she will soon, a matter of days, move out of our apartment at which point I'll move back in. From that point on, we will have no contact with one another at all, except for very strict exceptions which will hopefully not arise, emergencies, personal tragedies. And that's pretty much it. I miss her already. The next while is gonna suck. The aftermath may also suck, but then again this doesn't suck any worse than I was expecting the aftermath of the definitive breakup I thought would happen would suck. I don't want to promise an update that will tell you how it all ends. That is months away. And I don't know that I'll be in a sharing mood. And that's even if this ends with good news. Sorry for that. Hopefully I will though. Update 1. In my second and last edit to the original post, I told people not to expect an update. Frankly, I didn't think I'd want to write one, nor did I really think I'd have anything much to say. Things didn't exactly work out how I thought and said they would, so here I am. I did approach her last Saturday. I expressed what had been troubling me, and explained to her why I thought we should go our separate ways. As I thought it would, it came as a shock to her. She told me that while she had been wanting to start a family with me, she thought she'd made it clear that she'd chosen me over that prospect, fully aware it would not happen. She emphasized that the with me part was essential to her, that she couldn't picture it any other way. I told her that I was aware of the choice she'd made, but that I did not want to be the reason she'd miss out on being a parent. That while I'm sure she didn't make that call lightly, that I can tell she still wishes to have children, she did confirm that wasn't a desire that had just disappeared, that it was still there. And that while that's true I can only see her choice to stay with me leading to regret and resentment for her. I'm not gonna retell the whole discussion, those are the very rough broad strokes of both of our core positions, but it lasted hours, went through a range of arguments and emotions, cries on both sides, anger and distrust that I was being honest about my reasons on hers. I'd written in the original post that I thought I had the resolve to end things with her no matter what. As it turned out, maybe it came from a lack of resolve or maybe she just got through to me and it would have just been stubbornness not to listen. But at the end of it we agreed on just taking time apart from one another for the foreseeable future. On her part she promised me she would truly take that time to think about all of it. To re-examine her feelings in depth. On mine I committed to accepting her choice. The argument that convinced me was that this would be the first time in over a decade, the first time since we properly became adults, that we wouldn't be in each other's life, and that if the gain of perspective from being apart didn't change her mind, that had to mean something. Trying to see things rationally, I think the reasoning is sound. On a more emotional level, I cannot say I'm 100% certain I'm not just convincing myself of that, but overall I do think it's the way to go. The fact that, at this point, I don't know what she'll decide is one thing that makes me believe this was right. It also scares the shit out of me because, one of the two options is that I lose her. Might be dumb since I was ready to end it, but thinking about that prospect did and still does wreck me. Based on the responses I got last time, I'd wager many of you will think I was wrong to agree to this. Others advised exactly this, so maybe they'll be happy. Others, I'm sure, will still think I'm an asshole. Hopefully, this will turn out to be the right choice, whatever her decision ends up being. We have not set an exact time frame. I've asked that she take at least a few months as that sounds like a good minimum, and more importantly that she takes as long as she needs. We, obviously, won't be living together anymore. I'm currently staying at a hotel, but, her decision, she will soon, a matter of days, move out of our apartment at which point I'll move back in. From that point on, we will have no contact with one another at all, except for very strict exceptions which will hopefully not arise, emergencies, personal tragedies. And that's pretty much it. I miss her already. The next while is gonna suck. The aftermath may also suck. But then again, this doesn't suck any worse than I was expecting the aftermath of the definitive breakup I thought would happen would suck. I don't want to promise an update that will tell you how it all ends. That is months away, and I don't know that I'll be in a sharing mood. And that's even if this ends with good news. Sorry for that. Hopefully I will though. Update 2. So, I'm not quite sure how many people remember and/or care about my original posts. They're still up on my profile if you need a refresher. But either way, here it comes. First off, I did break our no contact policy once. A couple of weeks in, I reached out to let her know about my intent to get a vasectomy, which happened a few weeks after that. It was a short conversation. She told me she did expect I might want to do that. We both confessed to missing the other, and that's pretty much it. I hadn't told her before our break because I'm skittish about medical procedures and was still reading up on and talking myself into it, and I didn't wait till after, because I felt that was information that could help her reflection, and also didn't like the idea of either delaying the procedure for an unknown amount of time or going through with it behind her back, if that makes sense. Now, on to the conclusion to all of this. I won't keep you in suspense any longer. My partner and I are back together and have been for some weeks. Aside from my transgression, we had no contact with one another for the duration of the outbreak, until she reached out to me saying she had made her decision and asking if we could meet later that day, at our place. Technically just mine at that point, but you get it. Once she got there, she talked me through what she'd been doing during our time apart. She explained that at first she needed some time adjusting to life without me, not just in the sense of missing me as a person but also of not having a partner for the first time in a decade. Our experiences in that regard were rather similar. I guess we'd both grown to be somewhat codependent. Once she was past that, she started exploring her feelings on parenthood. One thing she did was talk about it with friends and relatives, both with parents, future parents as well as child-free couples, talking about their experience, about how they came to end up where they did. She also made a point to spend time with children, babysitting for friends semi-regularly and stuff like that. There was also a lot of pure introspection, thinking about her feelings as well as our relationship. She told me that while she does love being around children, she can confidently say that she doesn't need children of her own, and that she would rather be with the right person. Lucky for me, she still thinks I'm that person. While we both had to shed a bit of our codependency, the yearning and love for one another didn't go away or dim for either of us. Back to her thoughts on children and not having them, she said that she'd still have children in her life. Her brother and his wife are planning to start a family soon. My own sister, who is on good terms with my partner, already has one. And that would be enough to fulfill that part of her. She said she was sure and asked if I was going to be able to accept her decision. I said yes and thanked her for respecting my own decision not to have children and still wanting to be with me. We also talked about how worthwhile each of us felt this time apart had been. She said that while it ultimately didn't change her mind, it reinforced it, and she said that she could understand why I needed that added certainty. She did add that she wished I'd been more open to her about this whole thing before I'd essentially convinced myself to end things with her, that she felt communication had before been a strong point of our relationship and that it did hurt to be blindsided. I committed to doing better in the future should any such circumstances arise. And that's kind of it. We've fallen back into our relationship dynamic pretty seamlessly. She's back living with me in our apartment. We've been making up for lost time, catching up on what the other had been up to, and made a point to have what I'd call an above average amount of romantic evenings and such since we got back together. Really though, the romance is nice, just being with her again has been bliss. Her 30th birthday is coming up over the summer and we've made plans for a 2-week getaway somewhere sunny to celebrate, just the two of us. We will also have a thing with friends and family once we're back, but we'll be away for the day proper. Not our first time vacationing together, of course, but kinda pulling out all the stops on this one. I'm also considering maybe popping the question then, but I first want to sound out that it is still what she wants. Hopefully I don't completely ruin the surprise trying to figure that out. I'd like to thank those who left comments or reached out in DMs, whether they were messages of support, advice or criticism. I was not in the ideal mindset to accept feedback after my initial submission, but I did find worth in a lot of what I dismissed at the time, rereading those threads, the ones I made but also on another sub they were reposted to, during the past months. This will hopefully be the last update, but I'll try to answer a few comments. Years after my brother evicted me for his growing family, he now wants to move into my home. Am I the asshole for refusing to help? Alright, this is a long one, and I honestly need an outside perspective. Several years ago, I, 28F, was living with my older brother Tom, 37M, and his wife Karen, 34F. I had just graduated from college, had a pretty bad job at the time, and was struggling to make ends meet. Tom had a house with a guest room, and he told me I could stay with them for a while until I got back on my feet. I was beyond grateful, and I made sure to help out however I could, cooking, cleaning, buying groceries when I could afford it. Fast forward about 6 months. I finally landed a decent job and was able to contribute more financially. I was on my way to becoming independent. Around this time, Karen got pregnant. At first, everything seemed fine. But then Karen started dropping subtle hints that they needed more space for the baby. The hints soon turned into direct conversations about how they needed the guest room for a nursery. Tom assured me that I could stay until I found a new place, but Karen was clearly becoming more agitated by the day. Then, one afternoon, I came home from work to find all my stuff packed up and sitting in the hallway. Tom told me that Karen had decided they needed me out ASAP. No discussion, no warning. He tried to soften the blow by saying they'd help me with a security deposit on a new place, but it was humiliating and hurtful. I ended up couch surfing for a couple of months until I could afford a small studio apartment. It was a really tough time for me, both emotionally and financially. I'll never forget the feeling of being thrown out of my own brother's house like that. Fast forward to now. Tom's life has taken a turn. His business went under, and they're having financial issues. Last week, he called me out of the blue, sounding desperate. They're being evicted from their house and have nowhere to go. He asked if he, Karen, and their 2 kids could stay with me for a few months, while they get back on their feet. Here's the thing. I'm doing much better now. I have a good job, a nice apartment, and I've been saving for a house. I can technically accommodate them, but the thought of letting them move in after what they did to me years ago just doesn't sit right. I told Tom I needed to think about it, and ever since, he's been sending me guilt-trippy texts about how family is supposed to be there for each other, and how they have nowhere else to go. Even my parents have gotten involved, saying I should let them stay with me because they're family, and what happened years ago is in the past. But here's the kicker. Karen hasn't apologized once for how they treated me. Not a word. She didn't even acknowledge it when we spoke on the phone. It's like they expect me to just forget about it and welcome them with open arms. I'm torn. Part of me feels like I should help because they are my family, but the other part of me feels like this is karmic justice. Am I the asshole for refusing to let them stay with me after what they did? Or should I let the past go and help them out in their time of need? I gave my sister-in-law a pregnancy book, unknowingly exposing her affair with my husband's friend. Now the family's in chaos. We know each other since our husbands, Charlie, 26M, sister-in-law Cheryl, 28F, and I, 26F, attended high school together. Charlie and I were in the same year and are sweethearts from high school. We began dating our sophomore year and have been together ever since. With Cheryl, things have always been different. She's always despised me, hence I would want to say we were high school nemesis as the sentiment was reciprocal. She was a senior 2 years older than us, yet that didn't stop her from being absolutely rude to me. She was a vicious bully in high school, and regrettably, not much has changed since then. Only I could stand up to her back in high school. Everyone else was terrified since Cheryl and her buddies were infamous for mistreating anyone they came across. Some people even moved schools because of their terrible deeds or spreading of tales. They were that horrible. I am not exaggerating. I never feared her, even before Charlie and I began dating. I had always been acquainted with her brother. Cheryl didn't seem like this undefeatable entity to me as he and I had been great friends and I often stayed out at his house. She seemed like any other child. That's how everyone ought to have seen her, in my opinion, but high school can be weird. Still, I wasn't scared of Cheryl. Once I started dating Charlie, I became even more bold. She probably felt powerless over me, even as a senior, and this disturbed her. She once did something truly terrible to me. As usual, one morning upon opening my locker, dead fish and a lot of fish water dropped on me. Head to toe I was covered in nasty, sticky slime. I had to go home since I was so offended, and it was embarrassing and demoralizing. Though I couldn't prove Cheryl was behind it, I felt it had to be her. We had a severe verbal argument in the cafeteria the day before. I labeled her a brain-dead zombie in front of her friends, some of whom even laughed. She did this to me since she couldn't let that go. Charlie felt it had to be his sister too, and their argument turned out really intense. He managed to convince her to back off even though he cannot get her to apologize to me. Though Charlie and I have been together for years, Cheryl and I never spoke once that incident occurred. But once Charlie and I got married last year, my in-laws informed Cheryl and me that since we were now family, we had to try more to get along. Some nosy relatives had been questioning our lack of communication or simply glancing at each other during family events, which embarrassed them. Having gone far from high school, I was ready to let the past pass. I agreed to be polite. Cheryl and I shook hands like grown-ups. Though we chose to be friendly at family functions rather than avoid one another, we were not going to be best friends overnight. Things appeared to be going good a year ago. We would say hi and then go on whenever we ran across each other. We had left the bad blood behind us, so I assumed, but then she became cruel once more. She showed up empty-handed on my birthday some few months earlier, which was okay. She then told me she was actually teaching me cooking classes and emailed me an online program she had bought at the party itself while I was opening everyone's gifts. She said it was meant to be a joke, but nobody else laughed and I didn't either. For background, I had done all the cooking for the day alone, hence it was quite nasty. I have always loved working in the kitchen and experimenting even though I am not a professional chef. Since childhood, cooking has been a pastime of mine. Her comment, she was going to give me cooking lessons, was quite nasty. Right after she had eaten a whole dinner I had made. As Charlie had pointed out, everyone knew I produced everything. I took it to heart since I had worked hard and woke up at 6:30 a.m. to make sure everything was perfect. No one truly laughed even once she explained it as a joke. She persisted even though several people laughed merely to let her drop it. She kept insisting she was kidding, but she really thought I should have culinary classes since everything she had eaten that day made her feel sick and she kept saying she might throw up at any time. She also made jokes on how everyone should clear the path to the bathroom should she have to barf. She was truly approaching my last nerve at the end of the evening, and I felt relief when she left. She didn't even bother bidding farewell after spending the whole day cracking jokes at the expense of my cooking abilities, which, by the way, aren't particularly horrible. Charlie and everyone else told me the food was fantastic, hence I have no idea what she was talking about. To be honest, I had begun to believe she might be a decent human being, but after my birthday I chose to resume neglect of her. She obviously still lived in her high school mean girl form, and someone like her had no right to be friendly with me. Cheryl had her birthday last week. She had to invite me even if we are not getting along since I asked her to my party. Charlie traveling without me would have been strange, hence she invited me in order to maintain family peace. That proved to be rather a blunder. I chose to let her taste her own medication. Based on a few weeks old overheard talk, I handed her the book What to Expect When You're Expecting *. For background, Cheryl came up to our place 3 weeks ago. She insisted on talking to Charlie in private and appeared depressed. She didn't realize I was standing immediately outside listening in on their conversation. I left the room to let them chat in the living room. Though I knew it wasn't moral, I was intrigued and wanted to listen in so Charlie could cover for me when she left. Cheryl was pregnant, per what I understood, but she was truly concerned as she felt unprepared to be pregnant. She had come to consult her brother. Charlie advised her to talk to her spouse even if she felt unprepared. Given that the pregnancy was early, they may discuss ending it should she still feel unprepared. He reasoned that chatting to her husband could allow her to relax and take better control of the circumstances. Cheryl left after briefly consoling her. I told Charlie what I had overheard as she left. We both agreed she had been behaving oddly. She appeared strange coming to us instead of her husband even if she wasn't ready for a baby. She said some things that nearly sounded like she needed Charlie's assistance in covertly ending the pregnancy, but he wasn't ready to engage in such dishonest behavior. He thought her husband ought to know before any decisions were taken. Though ultimately the woman's decision is hers, we felt her spouse at least deserved to be included in the conversation given she was married. We had not heard anything else regarding her pregnancy since that day. Still, I decided to pull a small practical joke on her and handed her that book. Fortunately, she did not unwrap the gifts in front of every visitor at the party, yet it made no difference since the book truly got her into trouble. Her husband might thus eventually find himself leaving her. She called me in tears the day after her birthday, stating I had destroyed her life and charged me with purposefully undermining her marriage. What she was talking about eluded me. She was so enraged and was screaming at me, so I couldn't even get her to clarify what was happening. She hung up silently, done, without further word. Following that phone chat, my in-laws got in touch and reported exactly what had happened. She apparently had been unwrapping all of her gifts with her husband, and then that book surfaced. I had even left a note stating that Charlie and I wished to congratulate her and affixed it to the book. She hadn't told anyone yet about the pregnancy, but I wanted to play about with her the way she had done on my birthday. I had no clue it would have such dire results. She could not have become pregnant by her spouse since he was sterile. This was unknown to her. She apparently may have been cheating now, and her spouse had already shown suspicion. That book served to validate his misgivings. Though none of the family members know for sure whether she had been cheating or not, let's be honest, she most certainly wasn't biologically incapable of having children. In any case, that is not my line of work. All I know is she had come to Charlie thinking he would assist her covertly in ending the pregnancy. Now we know why she wanted to keep it a secret and why she was so queasy when she spoke with him. She cannot let that happen if she wanted to end the pregnancy without her husband knowing, since she is a homemaker and everything she spends might be followed by him. Even pulling money would be suspect, as it would be a large sum that would beg problems. Cheryl made a great effort to persuade her husband that I was merely teasing and that nothing was happening. He disagreed when she claimed the book was only a hoax. Unless there was some truth to it, he doubted Charlie and I would pull such a joke. He then requested Cheryl to leave, and today she lives with her parents. My in-laws asked me to talk to her husband and persuade him that I had only handed her the book to play about with. Given his suspicions of her adultery, they believed I might get him to approach her and fix things. Her fidelity now begged additional questions. I disagree, since they think I should not have done what I did and that I'm at blame. For the past week, my in-laws and I have been at conflict. Given her behavior at my birthday celebration, I believe I was justified in what I did. I don't think I should accept the fall for this, as I had no idea it would cause so much trouble. She most certainly should have been faithful to her husband if she wanted peace in her marriage. To hold me responsible for it is unfair. Charlie has the same sentiment. Though he believes the present was a little excessive given the events of my birthday celebration, he does not advise me to apologize to Cheryl or even talk to her husband about any of this. Saying we should resolve things since her marriage is in jeopardy, my in-laws keep fighting with us. They believe that should we fail to persuade her spouse that this was only a joke, the family may suffer from divorce. She most certainly was cheating, though, if she was pregnant when she spoke with Charlie and her husband is sterile. Should that be the case, we want no involvement whatsoever or defense of her. Apart from that, the book was only vengeance for the jokes she cracked at my birthday. I had no clue it would result in anything like this. I have nothing to be guilty over. It is not like I did it on intention. Still, they all seem to be behaving as though I'm the villain, the mastermind behind a sinister scheme meant to wipe her off target or otherwise. It's very strange. Suddenly I'm questioning my choices. AAT kindly sent a pregnancy book as a birthday present to my sister-in-law. Update 1, hi, so it's been 2 weeks since I handed Cheryl that book, and up until now we have avoided talking to her husband. From what we know, she had been cheating on her husband with another man, hence going forward we will also keep to that. Though I'm not sure specifically, I believe it's someone from high school. Worse, I believe it's someone from Charlie's acquaintance group, since a few days ago we spoke, more of an argument, on the phone with Cheryl. She stated it was quite unjust that she was being held accountable for all of this, but Charlie's friend was equally culpable. However, he wasn't getting any criticism and was even unwilling to defend her. Though we don't know exactly who she's referring to, Charlie has quite a few married pals from high school. That's not really our main concern. Managing my in-laws has proved somewhat challenging. I don't believe they have done it yet. They insist I should chat to her spouse before he files for divorce. He keeps telling he'll do it, but if he truly wants to split, he should have done it now. What he is waiting for is unknown to me. Anyway, they believe they still have time and that, if I only talk to him, I could be able to persuade him not to leave her by stating I was only doing a practical joke. I have nothing to do with all of this drama, hence I refuse to allow myself to get caught in it. Though they have been making it somewhat challenging for us, I simply want to back off and relax. Thus, yesterday we had to make a really difficult choice and ultimately block all 3 of them since they were slightly disturbing us. We can't keep talking to them, trying to help them to grasp where we are coming from. Over 2 weeks have passed. She was truly a bully to me in high school, yet many of the people in the comments on my first post felt it was unacceptable of me to do what I did. She had been cheating, hence I doubt I have to feel guilty about what I did. Still, folks are free to disagree with me in this free nation. Update 2. Hi. 3 days have passed since our last report, and at last we were able to identify the person she had been having the affair with. Charlie's friend she mentioned turned out to be among his closest pals. This surprised me somewhat a bit. Because his family was acting somewhat irrationally, Charlie had been complaining to his pals about how challenging things had been for him the past 2 weeks. I suppose his pal chose to come clean as he couldn't tolerate it anymore. He called Charlie and told him he had been seeing Cheryl in an affair. Apparently, all of this began roughly 1 year ago, just around our wedding's time. For us, it was really startling and we are still trying to understand it. Charlie is quite close to every one of his buddies, hence we never expected a betrayal like this. From what we have seen, this guy, who has been married for 3 years, and his wife seem to be truly in love. I personally know the woman. She talks endlessly about her husband. Right now, I just feel somewhat sorry for her. We decided straight away to cut him off, and right now we are not telling anyone since we do not want to discredit him. But we will most certainly not be entertaining this going forward. We even told him to tell his wife straightforward since she is the one who really needs to know the truth. Nobody should ever have to go through what this is like. He also supplied us with evidence of Cheryl cheating on her spouse alongside him. We have come to the conclusion that, at least nothing good would come of it if we allowed ourselves to be pulled into this play. Hence, our last call is keeping them blocked. To what we know, they have not discussed this with anyone else. Everyone still believes we get along well with my in-laws and that Charlie's relatives know nothing about the turmoil underway behind the scene. Given the circumstances, which would be somewhat embarrassing for the family, I'm betting they are keeping things under wraps in order to protect their name. Though I suppose it's a surface motivation, I value their great concern for their perceived image. We don't want to deal with other people right now and it's helping us keep everything secret. As it is, we have sufficient on our plates. Charlie's cousin is getting married in a few weeks, hence they will have to go to that wedding. We're not sure whether my in-laws or Cheryl will be there given the present circumstances, but if they decide to go, boy, that will be quite strange for everyone concerned. Update 3. Hey, practically 2 months after my last update is here. Not truly intriguing events occurred in these previous 2 months. We sort of forgot about my in-laws once we cut them off. Their end also lacked news, hence they did not try to get in touch with us. We thought perhaps Cheryl and her husband had been able to sort things out as neither a pregnancy announcement nor a divorce announcement was made. Good for them, then I suppose. Charlie and I know that adultery never stays secret, thus we don't really care about what's happening in their marriage. When her husband finds out the truth, she will most certainly receive what she deserves. Regarding the pregnancy, I suppose she stopped it some way. In any case, we didn't bother ourselves with it and kept to our own business as whatever happened is not of importance to us. That was till we visited his family at his cousin's wedding some few days ago. Including Cheryl's spouse and my in-laws, all of them were present. Once we arrived, we acted as though the others did not exist and neglected even greeting each other. Clearly, the rest of the family noticed it right away. People began posing all kinds of inquiries to us. Though they attempted to be subdued about it, we knew they were gathering gossip. But we simply tried to keep to ourselves so nobody would disturb us. We did not entertain anyone. Cheryl, on the other hand, followed a different strategy. She chose to blab her mouth off even though we knew the facts. We were ready to put up with her since we were 3 days at the hotel and it was just a matter of time till we returned home. But she began to say such terrible things about us that we had to confront her about it. Sadly, that resulted in a somewhat public confrontation between our families during the rehearsal dinner. It was someone else's wedding, hence I regret it as Charlie and his cousin got along well. Now one of the events was totally destroyed thanks to us. Naturally, following such a spectacle, we had to leave before the wedding even started since we couldn't stay much longer. We have since apologized multiple times to his cousin. She has indicated she is cool with it, but we still feel quite horrible about what happened. Cheryl and my in-laws, on the other hand, were really in charge of generating all of this turmoil, yet they hardly bothered to apologize to Charlie's cousin. At least we departed of our own will. The other family members practically urged them to go after we departed. Serves them right, they were due this kind of shame. It was pretty fulfilling for both of us when Charlie's cousin told him about it the day before her wedding as we were phoning her apologies. Cheryl had been telling all the family, and everyone who would listen that we had tried to destroy her marriage by lying about her adultery, therefore leading us to a fight in the first place. She said we failed in trying to undermine her marriage. Clearly, that was untrue since, as we indicated, her marriage life is not something we give much thought to. Choosing to live with a lady like her husband had shown how dumb he was. We were even ready to let that slip since we were attending someone else's wedding and we wanted to avoid starting a scene. She then began asserting, though, that we were the ones having an open marriage and that I wanted to get close to her husband, which explained why I'd always been so envious of her. We couldn't live with that. We resolved to face her then. I mentioned all the evidence, the screenshots we had gotten from Charlie's friend, which I had been saving to myself for so long on the evening of the rehearsal dinner. Charlie and I now felt, nonetheless, that it was at last time to defend ourselves. She could not simply say anything she pleased and get away with it. Her husband can no longer ignore reality since he at last knows it. His call is whether or not he takes the correct decision for himself and leaves her. At least now there will be no more questioning of us. At least we left on our own with courtesy, avoiding being thrown out as others were. Though we are now attempting to move over it, it was just a really awful few days. The whole family knows Cheryl's type of person she is, thus I just feel sympathy for her husband as he decided to mend things with her even though it was useless. I truly hope he gets the bravery to escape. Should he decide to remain with her, then he just has absolutely no decency or self-respect. We eventually decided to go ahead and sabotage her marriage as she had been accusing us of for so long. She will now have to pay for trying to bully us. How she planned to get away with all of this is unknown. Since high school, Charlie and I have literally been standing up to Mom. I believe we have made it really evident that we are not scared of her. We were not thus going to back down either right now. She ought to have known that. Update 4. Consequently, it is happening. 2 weeks have passed since our return from Charlie's cousin's wedding, and today I at last heard from a couple of cousins Cheryl wrote about her and her husband divorcing. She said that it was a mutual decision to split ways and urged everyone to honor their privacy during this trying period. What a weight of lies this baggage carries. She's behaving as people weren't present at the wedding and like her entire family isn't aware of what actually happened and the real reason they're divorcing, hence I'm not sure why she's acting like we all already know, hence we will definitely be honoring her privacy. No one has to ask her what happened. The talk began when Charlie told some of his pals, thus even her friends have learned about it. We regret nothing about what we did. She had been spewing so much garbage about us in the past that we hardly need to feel guilty about what we did or regret her. Should she go low, we will go lower as well. Period is. She has always been a bully, thus we believe we did the correct thing as someone needed her down a peg. We are happy to be the ones doing that. If that makes some people view us as the bad guys, that is okay with us. For example, my in-laws have chosen to totally cut us off from their life. They even had their attorney get in touch with Charlie to let him know they had opted to avoid us and most likely would cut us off from the inheritance as well. As like we were going to learn that and start begging for pardon right away. That is not going to transpire. We are not money-based sellouts that one could purchase. Besides, since Cheryl hasn't worked since she graduated and has been depending on either her parents or her husband, they should most likely retain all their money to themselves, presumably for the rest of their lifetime. Thus, yes, they may keep their money and Cheryl with herself by all means. We behaved what we believed to be right. We are not going to act as though we are sorry for it. Right now, Charlie and I are quite happy with our life. We have no interest in anyone else. Am I the asshole for refusing to move my wedding to accommodate my brother's travel schedule? Now, everyone is furious with me. Living alone, I'm a 28-year-old lady with a regular 9-to-5 job. After almost 4 years together, Erin, my fiancé, and I have been engaged for around 1 year. We are at last organizing our wedding, something I have been dreaming about. I have given every tiny detail great care. For the past 4 months I have been tirelessly trying to make sure everything is flawless. We expected all of our loved ones to be there, so we selected the date, issued invites. That was the intended course of action regardless. Brandon and Daisy, my parents, make for an intriguing team. My 58-year-old dad works for a building company. He has always been the quiet, follow-through kind. Daisy, my mother, 55, has stayed at home for as long as I can recall. They have always harbored a particular fondness for my 32-year-old older brother, Fred. Actually, soft spot could be understated. Certainly their favorite, he is the golden child if you will. Fred is somewhat a bit of a character. Though I'll say he's usually ambitious, none of his commercial endeavors ever really turn out. He seems to live in a fantasy world where his next great invention would at last make him wealthy, having had several failed businesses. Married to Alice, 30, he has 2 children, 3-year Jenna and 5-year Ethan. Although I personally have nothing against them, it is no secret they live much over their means. My parents are always rescuing them. It has come to the point where it is expected. While I have always had to fend for myself, Fred and his family effectively live off the support of my parents. Though I knew there would be some drama, especially with Fred's concerns, I couldn't wait to inform my family when Erin proposed. Still, I tried to be upbeat. I recall the day we announced our participation. Just close family and friends, we had a little gathering at our residence. Sharing the news made me very eager, and for a split second it felt as though perhaps my parents would be delighted for me rather than only focused on Fred. Naturally though, Fred and Alice took the front stage. Just midway through our announcement, Fred began discussing his plans to open a new company and his desire to move to a larger house. The entire dialogue turned from our involvement to Fred's most recent ideas. Though it was aggravating, to put it mildly, I did not want to create a scene. I simply let my pride slide after swallowing it. Aaron observed though, and later that evening he told me he was glad of my handling of it. That was quite meaningful to me. Choosing the day was still another challenge. 4 months ahead we chose a date so that everyone had plenty of time to arrange. Before deciding on it, I even followed up with my parents to see whether they were conflict-free. No trouble, they promised me they would be there. Although I should have known better, I thought that marked the end of it. I went all out in the particulars. We selected flowers, a lovely location, and the ideal outfit. Everything was lining up and I was growing increasingly enthusiastic. This was meant to be our day, a celebration of our love amid the people most important to us. Hoping it would assist to ease any possible problems, I also included Fred and Alice in the wedding party. Deeply though, I felt a storm was building. That storm struck when my parents abruptly contacted me from out of the blue with a pressing demand. It sounded bad since they had to discuss the wedding. My parents abruptly decided a few weeks ago to travel with Fred and his family. At first I puzzled myself since I assumed they were discussing a trip following the wedding. But actually, they meant the week my wedding was scheduled. Since the wedding date ran counter to their vacation schedule, they wanted to know whether I might potentially change it. I gasped. I booked everything, the venue, the caterers, and had months of planning for this wedding. I sent invites. And now, as if it were some laid-back dinner gathering, they were asking me to reschedule the date. Suddenly less significant than a last-minute trip with Fred and his family was my wedding day, the day meant to be about Aaron and me. Though I attempted to keep cool, I was enraged. Why would they want to schedule a trip right next to the wedding date we have already decided upon? The answer from my mother was, well, you know how occupied Fred's calendar is, and this was the only time they could all go together. It shocked me. Fred's trip came first for them, then my wedding. I informed them there was no choice about the date. Everything was previously set, I could not have moved it merely to fit Fred's trip. Suggesting that perhaps I should at least speak with the venue and see if they could change the date, my dad tried to be a peacemaker. But I closed that right away. The date was decided upon and that was definitive. My mother became irate and declared I was being irrational when I insisted on a different date. She continued on how family should come first, and how my rigidity was making things tough for everyone. She even charged me with trying to sour their friendship with Fred and his family. Though I stood my ground, that truly stung. I informed them I was not going to reschedule the date. If they missed it, that was on them. For a minute they were quiet. Then my mother remarked they would have to think about it. They hung up, not even bidding farewell. It still amazed me that my own parents, on vacation, were genuinely thinking about skipping my wedding. Furious on my behalf, Aaron advised me to try to straighten things out by calling them back. I therefore followed. Hoping for some middle ground, I phoned them, but things did not proceed as expected. I tried to convey the significance of this wedding to me, the length of time I had been arranging it, and how painful it was that they were even recommending I change the date. Still, they were tenacious. My dad kept stating that Fred's family had already booked everything, fully ignoring the fact that I had booked everything in advance too. My mom kept suggesting that I was being irrational. Changing my schedule would be equally as difficult for me. It felt like chatting to a stone wall. I realized at the time I had to include the extended relatives. I told my aunt, who I live somewhat near, the circumstances. She promised to talk to my parents. She was exactly as startled as I was. Maybe hearing it from someone else will help them to recognize how foolish they were acting. My parents doubled down instead of backing off though. Beginning to present me as the irrational one, they began phoning other family members. They claimed I was not compromising and causing problems for everyone. They even made hints suggesting I was envious of Fred and sought to punish him by postponing the wedding date. Though some of the family began to support me, stating I should be more accommodating of Fred's family, it was total stupidity. They were obviously attempting to get me to cave in. I was not going to let them prevail. They were trying to compel me to modify the date by means of shame and family pressure. I was about to let them wreck it just to please Fred. I had every right to have my wedding on the day I had selected. I thus informed them that the date was set. Should they be unable to make it, that would be their choice. But that was final. I was not going to alter it. So Reddit, am I the jerk for not adjusting the wedding date in response to the vacation of their golden child? I am very appreciative of everyone who took the time to reply. After publishing my experience here, I got an incredible amount of support and guidance. Reviewing the comments, many individuals speculated that there could be more to my parents' abrupt trip plans than they were disclosing. It started me to consider, thus I chose to dig some. I began by chatting once more with my aunt, who has always seemed to me as essentially a second mother. She was not surprised by what was happening as she knew how my parents are with Fred. She became quite quiet though, when I mentioned the vacation. A moment later she said she had heard Fred was once more experiencing some major financial difficulties. His most recent commercial endeavor apparently failed, and he owed money. Though not enough, my folks had started supporting him once more. Desperate, Fred was seeking for a means to keep his head above water. As it happens, the trip was really a cover tale. Though not for a laid-back vacation, my parents were intending to send Fred and his family to Europe. They were scheduled to meet some possible backers Fred had located abroad. Before Fred lost everything, the entire trip was a last-ditch attempt to find someone to commit to his company. Their financial position was depending on this trip to save Fred, hence they were quite determined to travel. When I learned, I became enraged. It was about my parents once more putting Fred above everything else, including my wedding, not only about the vacation. They were ready to skip my big day in order to try to save Fred from another problem he had created. Knowing the facts, I understood I had to face Fred. I inquired whether we might meet when I phoned him. I didn't want to allow him time to get ready for any excuse, thus I didn't inform him what it was about. I came right to the point when we got together. I assured him I understood his financial problems, the trip, the investors. He initially tried to play it off, claiming it was merely a business opportunity that happened to line up the wedding date, but I was not buying it. Defensively, he stated I didn't know how much pressure he was under. How he was trying everything he could to support his family. I reminded him that our parents had been rescuing him for years. This was not the first time he had fallen into a financial hole. Fred said at last that things were terrible. His company was close to bankruptcy, hence he would lose everything should this investor transaction fall short. But he sought to guilt-trip me rather than own responsibility. As his sister, he advised me to want to assist him in whatever capacity, even if that meant changing the date of my wedding. He charged me with being egotistical and unconcerned about his family. That was the final straw. I informed him that although I had supported him as much as I could over the years, I would not be sacrificing my wedding day for his bad choices. I made it plain that I was not going to modify the date. If he couldn't be there, that was his option. I went away leaving him seated there. Following the confrontation with Fred, I chose to get in touch with Alice. I wanted to hear her side of the tale since I wasn't sure how much she knew about things. She seemed tense as soon as we sat down when we met for coffee. She most likely understood I was not there to discuss wedding preparations. I asked her straightforwardly about her knowledge of Fred's predicament and the European trip. She said she knew the financial problems but lacked all the specifics. Though Fred had withheld a lot of it from her to guard her, she knew things were horrible. She appeared startled when I told her the true motivation for the vacation. She was unaware that my parents intended to try to find investors for Fred's company during the trip. Alice said she had been concerned about Fred's spending patterns for some time, but every time she brought it up he would dismiss her. She also said she was disappointed about missing the wedding, but Fred had persuaded her this trip was absolutely essential for their futures. When I told her how much this was affecting me and how it was seriously dividing the family, she seemed really offended. Alice clearly seemed to be in a difficult position. She wanted to help her husband, but she also wanted to avoid being the cause my parents missed my wedding. I wasn't holding my breath when she promised to speak with Fred and try to find another way to handle things. If only Fred is stubborn. Knowing that Alice wasn't totally on board with this strategy made me feel a bit better, but I also realized that ultimately Fred was probably going to act any way he felt was best for him, regardless of how it affected the rest of us. Given everything that had transpired, I came to see that gathering the entire family and laying everything out on the table was the only way to fix this. Though I wasn't sure how it would turn out, I knew that it would only become worse if we avoided confronting this squarely. I thus convened a family conference. We needed to talk, I told Fred, Alice and my parents. No apologies, no delays. We chose to get together at my folks' house. Having Aaron at my side made me happy as he came to support me. You could see my folks were concerned since they were already here. Arriving soon afterward, Fred and Alice seemed defensive from the first. We all gathered in the living room, and I lost no time. I began by informing them I knew Fred's financial problems and the true purpose of the Europe vacation. Fred tried to seem as if it wasn't a big problem as my parents looked startled. I had none at all. I laid everything out without holdback. The years of favoritism, the never-ending bailouts, and how this was only the most recent illustration of Fred coming first over me. I told them I knew they wanted to assist Fred, but there had to be a line and this was it. I described how much this wedding meant to me. How much work I had put into organizing it and how heartbroken I was that they would be ready to toss it all for travel. I then took out the proof I had collected, copies of emails and messages between Fred and my parents debating the trip, the investors, and how they should keep it under wraps. I even kept a copy of the itinerary proving that the vacation fell during my wedding week. Fred was enraged that I had gone behind his back to obtain this information. My parents seemed to want to crawl under the couch. I gave no thought at all. I was not going to allow them to keep controlling me or guilt-inducing me about wanting to have my wedding as scheduled. Alice wasn't totally on board with the vacation, which also seemed to surprise Fred. He turned to her, but she only turned away to validate what I had said. Starting to yell, Fred accused me of attempting to ruin his life and said I was merely jealous since he was the successful one in the family. Saying she only wanted to help both of her children and didn't want to have to pick between us, my mom started crying. Silence from my dad really infuriated me. Usually the one to keep out of the drama, he would have been here to support me this time. At last Alice spoke up, saying she felt uneasy about missing the wedding given her knowledge of the whole truth. She claimed they had to come up with another approach to handle Fred's company issues outside of compromising family occasions. Fred seemed inclined toward conflict, but Alice held her ground. In that instant I did indeed start to respect her somewhat. But I still had to finish. They had to decide whether to give this trip first priority and miss my wedding or find another method to assist Fred that did not necessitate deserting me. I made it plain that I would not be changing the date. If they could not accept this, they were clearly choosing what they wanted. I let them decide over 24 hours. I warned them I would terminate relations with them should they decide not to show up for the wedding. I was not going to let them ruin my wedding day or allow them to treat me as though I did not matter. I even intimated that, should they compel me, I will publicly share the complete truth. I knew that his final requirement was for his possible investors to learn about his financial mess. This was my trump card. Fred was furious as my parents seemed as though they had been struck by a truck. Alice merely looked depressed. Though I was tired of being pushed about and of constantly putting Fred's wants second, I didn't want to do this. Telling them they knew how to get to me, I got up, walked out with Aaron. Things have been tough since that conference. Neither my parents nor Fred have heard from each other, hence I'm not sure what they will decide. I am thus simply waiting to find out whether my parents will at last prioritize me or whether this marks the end of our relationship as I know it. Update. My parents contacted out at last after what felt like an eternity. It was the longest 24 hours of my life, and as I waited for their judgment I couldn't concentrate on anything else. I knew nothing about what they would say when my phone rang, and part of me wanted not to hear it. My mother began her apology first. They had thought a lot, she stated following our last talk. They asked me to change the date and came to see how much this wedding meant to me and how cruel they had been. She said she hadn't thought about how much they were hurting me in the process and they had been overly preoccupied trying to save Fred from his most recent catastrophe. We chose to gather at my parents' house. Having Aaron at my side made me happy as he came to support me. You could see my folks were concerned since they were already here. Arriving soon afterward, Fred and Alice seemed defensive from the first. We all gathered in the living room and I lost no time. I began by informing them I knew Fred's financial problems and the true purpose of the Europe vacation. Fred tried to seem as if it wasn't a big problem as my parents looked startled. I had none at all. I laid everything out without holdback. The years of favoritism, the never-ending bailouts, and how this was only the most recent illustration of Fred coming first over me. I told them I knew they wanted to assist Fred, but there had to be a line and this was it. I told them how much this wedding meant to me, how much work I had put into organizing it, and how heartbroken I felt that they would be ready to toss it all for travel. I then pulled out the material I'd collected, copies of emails and texts between Fred and my parents debating the trip, the investors, and how they should keep it under wraps. I even kept a copy of the itinerary proving that the vacation fell during my wedding week. Fred was enraged that I had gone behind his back to obtain this information. My parents seemed to want to crawl under the couch. I gave no thought at all. I was not going to allow them to keep controlling me or guilt-inducing me about wanting to have my wedding as scheduled. Alice wasn't totally on board with the vacation, which also seemed to surprise Fred. He turned to her, but she only turned away to validate what I had said. Starting to yell, Fred said I was merely jealous since he was the successful one in the family and accused me of wanting to ruin his life. Saying she only wanted to help both of her children and didn't want to have to pick between us, my mom started crying. Silence from my dad really infuriated me. Usually the one to keep out of the drama, he would have been here to support me this time. At last Alice spoke up, saying she felt uneasy about missing the wedding given her knowledge of the whole truth. She claimed they had to come up with another approach to handle Fred's company issues outside of compromising family occasions. Fred seemed inclined toward conflict, but Alice held her ground. In that instant I did indeed start to respect her somewhat. I still had to finish though. They had to decide whether to give this trip first priority and miss my wedding or find another method to assist Fred that did not necessitate deserting me. I made it plain that I would not be changing the date. If they could not accept this, they were clearly choosing what they wanted. I let them decide over 24 hours. I warned them I would terminate relations with them should they decide not to show up for the wedding. I was not going to let them ruin my wedding day or allow them to treat me as though I did not matter. I even intimated that, should they compel me, I will publicly share the complete truth. I knew that his final requirement was for his possible investors to learn about his financial mess. This was my trump card. Fred was furious as my parents seemed as though they had been struck by a truck. Alice merely looked depressed. Though I was tired of being pushed about and of constantly putting Fred's wants second, I didn't want to do this. Telling them they knew how to get to me, I got up, walked out with Aaron. Things have been tough since that conference. Neither my parents nor Fred have heard from each other, hence I'm not sure what they will decide. I am thus simply waiting to find out whether my parents will at last prioritize me or whether this marks the end of our relationship as I know it. Update. My parents contacted out at last after what felt like an eternity. It was the longest 24 hours of my life, and as I waited for their judgment I couldn't concentrate on anything else. I knew nothing about what they would say when my phone rang, and part of me wanted not to hear it. My mother began her apology first. They had thought a lot, she stated following our last talk. They asked me to change the date and came to see how much this wedding meant to me and how cruel they had been. She said she hadn't thought about how much they were hurting me in the process and they had been overly preoccupied trying to save Fred from his most recent catastrophe. We chose to gather at my parents' house. Having Aaron at my side made me happy as he came to support me. You could see my folks were concerned since they were already here. Arriving soon afterward, Fred and Alice seemed defensive from the first. We all gathered in the living room and I lost no time. I began by informing them I knew Fred's financial problems and the true purpose of the Europe vacation. Fred tried to seem as if it wasn't a big problem as my parents looked startled. I had none at all. I laid everything out without holdback. The years of favoritism, the never-ending bailouts, and how this was only the most recent illustration of Fred coming first over me. I told them I knew they wanted to assist Fred, but there had to be a line and this was it. I told them how much this wedding meant to me. How much work I had put into organizing it, and how heartbroken I felt that they would be ready to toss it all for travel. I then pulled out the material I had collected, copies of emails and texts between Fred and my parents debating the trip, the investors, and how they should keep it under wraps. I even kept a copy of the itinerary proving that the vacation fell during my wedding week. Fred was enraged that I had gone behind his back to obtain this information. My parents seemed to want to crawl under the couch. I gave no thought at all. I was not going to allow them to keep controlling me or guilt-inducing me about wanting to have my wedding as scheduled. Alice wasn't totally on board with the vacation, which also seemed to surprise Fred. He turned to her, but she only turned away to validate what I had said. Starting to yell, Fred said I was merely jealous since he was the successful one in the family and accused me of wanting to ruin his life. Saying she only wanted to help both of her children and didn't want to have to pick between us, my mom started crying. Silence from my dad really infuriated me. Usually the one to keep out of the drama, he would have been here to support me this time. At last Alice spoke up, saying she felt uneasy about missing the wedding given her knowledge of the whole truth. She claimed they had to come up with another approach to handle Fred's company issues outside of compromising family occasions. Fred seemed inclined toward conflict, but Alice held her ground. In that instant I did indeed start to respect her somewhat. I still had to finish though. They had to decide whether to give this trip first priority and miss my wedding or find another method to assist Fred that did not necessitate deserting me. I made it plain that I would not be changing the date. If they could not accept this, they were clearly choosing what they wanted. I let them decide over 24 hours. I warned them I would terminate relations with them should they decide not to show up for the wedding. I was not going to let them ruin my wedding day or allow them to treat me as though I did not matter. I even intimated that, should they compel me, I will publicly share the complete truth. I knew that his final requirement was for his possible investors to learn about his financial mess. This was my trump card. Fred was furious as my parents seemed as though they had been struck by a truck. Alice merely looked depressed. Though I was tired of being pushed about and of constantly putting Fred's wants second, I didn't want to do this. Telling them they knew how to get to me, I got up, walked out with Aaron. Things have been tough since the conference. Neither my parents nor Fred have heard from each other, hence I'm not sure what they will decide. I am thus simply waiting to find out whether my parents will at last prioritize me or whether this marks the end of our relationship as I know it. Update: my parents contacted out at last after what felt like an eternity. It was the longest 24 hours of my life, and as I waited for their judgment I couldn't concentrate on anything else. I knew nothing about what they would say when my phone rang, and part of me wanted not to hear it. My mother began her apology first. They had thought a lot, she stated following our last talk. They asked me to change the date and came to see how much this wedding meant to me and how cruel they had been. She said she hadn't thought about how much they were hurting me in the process and they had been overly preoccupied trying to save Fred from his most recent catastrophe. She then informed me they had decided to postpone their European vacation. After all, they planned to be at the wedding. Surprised, I had readied myself for the worst since I knew Fred would be chosen once more. It was such relief to hear them select my wedding over the trip. Next, my dad answered on the phone to validate what my mother had said. He said he will be there for me on my big day and apologies for not acting sooner. He also said they needed to rethink how they had been managing things as they were beginning to see how much Fred's problems will impact the family. Though it was a start, it was not precisely the sincere apologies I had been expecting for. Most important was that they were traveling to the wedding. I appreciated their choice, and our call concluded on an unexpectedly upbeat note. It felt, for the first time in a long time, like perhaps things might improve between us. My parents started canceling the Europe trip right away after the decision was made. As you could expect, Fred's reaction to them telling him the trip was canceled was not great. Fred was irate. Almost right away, he called to ask what I had said to our parents to cause them to postpone the trip. I told him I had just told them the truth, that their participation at my wedding meant more to me than anything else and that they had to decide what was more vital. Fred said I was trying to harm his prospects of turning his company around, therefore accusing me of influencing them. He even implied that, driven by jealousy, I was trying to ruin his life. Though it was the same old song and dance I had heard from him a million times before, this time I resisted letting it get to me. I gently informed him that our parents had decided upon their own course and that I had nothing to do with his difficulties. He could be furious with someone, not with me, if he wanted to be angry with someone. Fred then hung up on me and I didn't hear from him for some time. Though I was concerned about how this would impact the wedding day, I was also glad my parents were at last seeing the whole picture. They had decided to be by my side, and that was a positive direction. Over the next several days, my parents began to examine their connection with Fred and me closely. Several times my mother checked in with me, and during one of those calls she admitted that she and my dad had been discussing their treatment of us growing up a lot. She said they had always considered Fred as the one who required more help and attention due to his problems, but in doing so they had neglected my needs and taken my freedom for granted. She told me they were starting to understand how much they had harmed me over the years by always putting Fred first. Apparently, my dad brought it up saying they should constantly support Aaron and me rather than only during difficult times. This would help us. Though it was not a 180, it was the first time I had ever heard them freely admit their bias. They committed themselves to treat both of their children equally and to be more present in my life. Though I was unsure of how much of it would really stick, it was a lot to absorb. They were real, and it gave me hope that maybe going forward our relationship may become better. Regarding Fred, he remained enraged, but my parents were resolved not to let that control their behavior anymore. They were beginning to realize that continually rescuing him was not benefiting anyone. Not him, not them, and most certainly not our family as a whole. I never would have imagined hearing them suggesting they would start imposing some limitations on him. Fred obviously did not lie down for any of this. He intensified his efforts to pull my parents back on his side when he understood they were serious about calling off the vacation and attending the wedding. He began threatening our parents in all kinds of ways, including maybe suing them should they not follow through with the trip. He said he would have to sue them for breach of contract, should they fail to assist him with his business. They had pledged to help him. Though I believe Fred knew deep down, it was really an empty threat, and it highlighted his extreme need for their acceptance. Not one of my parents backed down. They advised him that their choice was definite and he had to work out his own issues without depending much on them. For them, this was a significant step, and even if it was difficult for them to challenge Fred, they knew it was essential. Fred continued from there though. He began trying to get other family members on his side by corresponding with them. Claiming that I had coerced our parents into postponing the trip in order to undermine him, he presented me as the villain. With some relatives following Fred's story, it created some conflict inside the extended family. Most of them saw through it and backed my parents' choice to give my wedding top priority. Fred tried his best, but his strategies for manipulation were less successful than they had been. People seemed at last seeing him for who he truly was, a person who was always seeking a handout instead of owning his own mistakes. All of this drama clearly creates a gulf inside the family. Certain of our relatives are firmly on Fred's side, thinking that our parents ought to have honored their word to support him no matter what. Viewed as the spoiled younger sister exploiting her wedding to create distance between the family, they perceive me. Others, particularly those who have seen how Fred's actions have impacted my parents over the years, support their choice to go to the wedding and begin enforcing limits with him. These days, family get-togethers are more contentious and individuals are silently siding. Those who believe I'm in the wrong will judge me. I try not to let that affect me. Aaron has been fantastic in keeping me focused on the positives. That is, that our wedding preparations are still underway and that my parents will be here to assist us. Not easy, but is it? I worry about how this would impact our family over time. Will this divide ever close or will it keep widening till it is too great to span? I know I have to be steadfast in my decisions even though I have no solutions. Especially when it involves compromising my own happiness, I cannot keep stopping backwards to fit everyone else. About Fred, I have no idea what his future holds. He is still looking for a means to salvage his company. Without our parents' financial support, it will be difficult. Aaron and I are concentrating on our wedding and the life we are creating together in the interim. Although the path has been difficult, I hope the changes my family is undergoing will result in a better, more balanced relationship for all of us down the road. Update. Though all the drama preceded the wedding, I wanted this day to be flawless. The day of the wedding eventually arrived. Aaron and I had worked so hard to make it unique, I simply wanted everything to go without incident. Nancy, my maid of honor, who has been my best friend since college, kept reminding me that today was about Aaron and me and that nothing else counted. At the site, a lovely garden estate, Aaron and I had fallen in love with the moment we first laid eyes on it. We were ready. Though I had not spoken to Fred since our previous chat, I knew my folks were on their way. Not sure whether he would show up or not, and the idea of a possible confrontation was weighing on me. The wedding was lovely, and I felt as luckiest person on earth as we exchanged our vows. Looking over at my parents in the front row, I saw my mum cleaning away tears. That was a little but important moment that gave me hope that perhaps we were headed in the correct direction after all. The ceremony itself lived out all I had hoped for. We kept it private, with just close family and friends, and the officiant did a fantastic job of making it seem heartfelt and personal. We snapped pictures in the yard following the ceremony. The setting was really lovely, the light was perfect. While things were still a little awkward, my parents joined us for some family photographs and it was obvious they were really delighted for us. They were trying, and it meant a lot to me. The welcome speeches were moving when it came time. My dad even shocked me with a moving toast in which he apologized for the recent conflict and said he was really pleased of the woman I'd grown to know. For him, it was a significant step and seemed like a fresh start even though it did not wipe out all that had transpired. Fred and Alice arrived just when I believed the day was running without any problems. They hadn't RSVP'd, so I wasn't sure whether they would show at all. They entered the midst of the reception and momentarily the place went quiet. Fred seemed to be carrying proof. He initially went up to our parents, had a little whispered talk with them and then moved over to Aaron and myself. Alice held back, clearly uneasy. Fred congratulated us when he got here, but he was obviously not really here to rejoice. He was there to make a point. Right in the middle of our wedding reception, he wanted to strike up a discussion on his company problems. Even on my wedding day, he seemed unable to tolerate not being the focal point of attention. Aaron moved in before I could speak. Fred was gently reminded by him that today was about celebrating our marriage and that this was not the time or place for business. Fred did not find it appealing. Aaron was not having it as he tried to protest. Fred gave up and turned away finally, but harm was done. I made every effort to ignore it and savor the remainder of the night. We danced, cut the cake and hung about with our loved ones. Though Fred tried to create drama, the evening closed on a good note. Officially, I married the love of my life. Nothing Fred did could take that away from me. Regarding Fred, his life has veered somewhat differently. My parents faced a tough choice following the wedding. They agreed to stop contributing financially. They came to see that continuously rescuing him was not doing him any good and that it was time for him to pay for his mistakes. Fred's company soon closed without our parents' assistance. He looked for additional investors, But those offers dropped through without the trip to Europe. He eventually had to start bankruptcy filings. He had trouble swallowing this harsh pill, hence his pride suffered greatly. At last Alice, who had been mounting annoyance with Fred's financial irresponsibility, reached her breaking point. She picked the children and left him, moving in with her parents as she worked out her future moves. Fred is learning to live alone and must start over in his life. Although I enjoy his demise less, I do believe this is the wake-up call he required. Perhaps now he will begin to take charge of his own life instead of depending on others to resolve issues. Only time will let us know. For Aaron and me, at last we can concentrate on our future free from all the familial strife. We intend to shortly start a family. We had to postpone our European honeymoon as well since all the wedding drama interfered. It seems like the ideal approach to honor our entering into this new phase of life. I want to pause to thank everyone on Reddit for their guidance and encouragement along this insane trip. Your statements gave me the will to defend myself and make some difficult decisions I might have otherwise backed off from. Though it wasn't simple, I'm rather happy I stayed with my guns. Fiancé's toxic best friend torments me, my mental health suffers. Is our relationship doomed or can we recover before the wedding? My fiancé has the biggest heart, would literally give you the shirt, pants, and hat off his body if you asked for it. He's a recovering people pleaser, and I get it because I also used to be a people pleaser. We've been together for 5+ years. A few months ago, I started picking up on his best friend making some not so nice comments towards me. I'm trying to be vague, but let's just say this friend is the type to read who in the room would be most affected by being picked on, and then he picks and picks and picks on them until they can't take it anymore. Nobody ever really holds him accountable for this, and unfortunately I have somehow become his favorite target. I tried to put up with these comments, but it started getting really elaborate. The friend would make up lies about me saying things I never said. He once called me in front of all our friends, my fiancé included, just to yell "you're a bad friend" into the phone and then hang up. There's so much to it that I can't share because I'm trying to be somewhat anonymous. It started having an effect on me and my mental health, and I ended up having a full breakdown where I told my fiancé how much this was all starting to hurt me. The first time I broke down over this, he said he would talk to his friend about messing with me less. He then told me his friend was sorry and that he'd be keeping an ear out for any other comments and he'd jump to my defense if it happened again. A few weeks later I had a second breakdown over all this. The situation itself is hitting a very specific childhood trauma trigger for me, and he admitted that his friend didn't actually apologize. He actually said he was sorry I was too sensitive to understand his humor. At that point I told my fiancé my friendship with this person is over and I want zero contact from here on out, even if it means I have to miss out on events and parties that I'd otherwise love to go to. He agreed with me that all of this is being done with the intention to get a rise out of me, and that even if we tried to get through to this friend he's so diabolical that we could never fully trust him to not treat me at least a little bit shitty. My fiancé kept asking if this meant he had to quit the project they're working on. I told him I would never tell him he had to because I know how much it means to him, but in all honesty, the fact that this person is treating me so poorly that I'm having physical stress reactions isn't enough for him to want to cut this person off does hurt a lot. The fact that it isn't a deal breaker for him is probably always going to sting a little. He's not confrontational at all and I always knew that, but it's not about confrontation. It's about standing in my corner. And I can't spend the rest of my life with someone who isn't in my corner. This friend is getting married to my best friend in a few months and we're both supposed to be in the wedding, but I really have no clue how. I get a literal knot in my stomach anytime his name is even mentioned now. I have seen this friend one time since all of this came to a head and he was so over the top nice to me that it came off as cocky. I had the second breakdown a few days afterwards because I realized I'm possibly going to spend the rest of my life on edge and on guard anytime this person is even somewhat in my vicinity. Even if they aren't actively fucking with me. I don't know how to come to terms with the fact that my fiancé was willing to lie to me on his shitty friend's behalf, but he's not willing to stand in my corner against him. I think it'll always hurt. This guy was supposed to be the best man in our wedding, and as a result we haven't been talking much about wedding plans. I think if he's still planning on this friend being in our wedding I may have to call it off for my own sanity, and that sucks so bad. This is fucking eating me alive. I love my fiancé so much. I love his big heart and the way he loves all of it. But he loves some truly wretched people and I don't know if he'll enforce any boundaries with those people before the lack of boundaries becomes too much for me to handle. I'm just hurt. And hurting. And I just want whatever outcome to play out so I can stop feeling so guilty and awful all the time. Comments. Comment 1. If your fiancé will not stick up for you, it's more than just being a people pleaser. He's a doormat. Comment 2. And her best friend isn't much of a friend either, considering the problematic friend is marrying her best friend. She should also be telling him to back off too. Update 1. Never thought I'd actually update this account out of sheer fucking embarrassment, but I wanted to share this for those who encouraged me to put myself first. I want you all to know my partner absolutely came through and protected me in this. We spent all this time since my last post up until last week communicating and trying to find a resolution, and walking through how it got this bad. He took a lot of accountability for that. This is not a case of me giving in. He understands fully that this has only got so bad because it's never been handled correctly, and he had a major hand in that. There were so many more layers to this than a Reddit post ever could have conveyed. The bottom line is we are closer than ever, and after a lot of talking, we decided on my partner sending a firm but not unkind message to his friend explaining the behaviors, explaining that they were hurting his partner, and that it needed to stop. He asked to write up the first draft and we could go over it together to try to perfect it. Reddit, please know the first draft my partner wrote was so spot on what I needed to read that it instantly shifted us into us versus the problem mode when we'd been stuck butting heads for weeks. He laid everything out so clearly and in ways that we hadn't discussed, so I know it came from him. We had to tone down a lot of the big emotions. We really truly gave the message its best shot to address the situation without being hostile. We knew the response would be bad no matter what, but I don't think anything could have fucking prepared us. This man went full scorched earth and blew up everything almost immediately. He insulted my partner. He told him these events didn't happen the way I claim they do. He demanded they meet up alone with a mediator. He even threatened to reach out to my partner's parents to fill them in, which is probably the moment we stopped taking his responses seriously. All of us are almost in our 30s. If once wasn't enough, he threatened it twice. We actually had to call them and warn them that he would be showing up at their place later this week and not to open the door. There's still a good chance he'll attempt it. We stayed respectful throughout all of this, which I feel good about. We didn't stoop to his level. We didn't insult anyone. We asked for basic human respect and somehow it blew up spectacularly. In the end, we both received a massive wall of text from my now ex-best friend, fully backing up her man and telling her side of the story, which is so insanely far off from what actually happened that all I can do is laugh. We've been shifting from crying to being dumbstruck to just straight up laughing because of the absurdity. I went into this thinking she was brainwashed, but it turns out I was wrong. They're a perfect match. I wish them all the best. I am sending them one last message setting the record straight, which my partner and I decided together was the best approach apart from just ghosting, before moving on from this entirely. I'm going to make it very clear this is done, zero contact indefinitely, and I will never look back. My partner and I both deserve way better friends and we both see that so clearly now. I am so fucking glad I learned my friend's true colors before we dropped $800 on a hotel for their wedding. Thank you to everyone who was kind. Not only did I put myself first in the end, but my partner did too. We're going to take this week in stride and process it all, grieve the friendships we once thought were forever, and at the end of the week we have a conveniently timed vacation to my partner's family cottage. I think we're going to come out of this stronger, because we already feel it. Again, thank you to those who had something productive to say. And I've made my peace with all the rest. I guess if the guy does something else outlandish, maybe I'll update, but for now, this chapter is closed and I'm so ready for it to start collecting dust. Comments. Comment 1. It sounds like both of your ex-friends were from your people's pleasing days. It's time for a fresh start. And I'm glad you're both going to get it before your wedding so they're not in the photos. Comment 2. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Wishing you both peace. Update 2. Hey all, told myself I wouldn't update again, but there has been a pretty massive development. Not sure if anyone is really that invested in this shit show, but it's actually helped me to type it out the first couple times, so maybe I'll feel a bit better if I do it again. Sorry in advance for how disgustingly long this is gonna be, lol. A few weeks ago the asshole showed his entire hand. He sent my partner a message at 11 a.m. on a Monday and it is the most unhinged shit I've ever read. I'll sum it up for you. The asshole said he believed my partner is in an abusive relationship and he should leave me, for his own happiness. He claimed he has evidence to support this. He admitted this was the big message he would have given had they met in person in the very beginning. He also told him he was worried sending the message would make things even worse for my partner if I saw it. He said I am someone he can never forgive and he will never want to associate with ever again. He ended it by saying he hopes he'll leave me so my partner can apologize for breaking up the band. Yes, it was a band. And they can start to repair their friendship. Obviously a whole lot to digest. I know y'all don't know me, but I'm obviously not abusing my partner lol. I shouldn't even have to clarify that, but I will anyway. This guy is 100% excommunicated from our lives indefinitely, Not that he already wasn't at that point. In light of this new info, I'd like to share some of the things the asshole has done over the past year or so that made me realize he was fucking with me. But I didn't clock at the time because, much like some of you, I thought I was just being sensitive. My partner and I joined some pals, including an asshole, to play a game together online. Lethal Company, if you're familiar. I have many hours in the game and know the monsters quite well, so I was pretty confused when I was slaughtered by a bracket 3 game days in a row, almost immediately upon entering the facility and splitting from the group. I mentioned at one point that I'd be having a lot more fun if I wasn't dying so quickly every time, and the asshole mockingly said it must be a skill issue. After a few more deaths, this time with me at least getting to explore a bit before getting my neck snapped, I asked if anyone had the Control Company mod installed, which allows the server host to play as the monsters. Suddenly the asshole had to go, and the lobby conveniently disbanded. I never brought my suspicions up to anyone because I knew it would be my word against his and I had no solid proof, so I wasn't positive. But when I finally mentioned it to my partner a couple of weeks ago after that text was sent, he told me he remembers the asshole staying on the ship and secretly going AFK multiple times in the game, which lines up pretty perfectly with my in-game deaths. When I said the asshole was being too nice, the time we saw him after my partner called him about his comments affecting me. I don't think I explained it right. My partner and I were sitting at a table at a local show and the asshole sat next to me, not my partner, and wouldn't stop touching my arm and asking me if I was enjoying the show. Multiple times he would just stare at me and grin as wide as he could. If I'd just been told something I did hurt my friend's partner, I don't think I'd be all over them the way this guy was to me. Hell, if it were me I'd at least throw a sorry about the other night their way. It felt like he was gloating that he got away with it. It was comically over the top and made me and my partner very uncomfortable. We talked on the drive home and we both felt the same about it. I was hanging out with my friend at her place and an asshole was there, so we all decided to head to my place and hang with my partner as a foursome. Right before we left, the asshole asked if I knew our mutual friend's big secret. I did not. I'm also not very close with this friend. My friend already knew and told him they should just tell me because I wouldn't be that invested, but asshole told her my partner didn't know yet and they couldn't tell me until we all got to my place and told him. He kept going on about how big the secret was and insisted that I'd freak out once I knew. I made a comment about how we were taking different cars and there was a chance my friend would just tell me on the way, so he looked her dead in the face and told her that he'd be genuinely upset with her if she told me before he told my partner. We respected that. When we got to my place, it was obvious my partner already knew. The big secret was simply that our friend was dating someone. I found out later that the asshole had called my partner the minute he got to his car and told him that both me and my friend didn't know and they should put on a big show of telling both of us together. My partner had known for weeks and the friend group had openly discussed it a few times, and it hadn't come up with me because, as I said, I'm not very close with this friend. I got baited, lol. Truly exhausting behavior. My partner had no idea what happened until I told him about the conversation at the asshole's place and my friend didn't say a word in my defense. I typed out exactly why this was ridiculous once all this came to a head and they both refused to even acknowledge it. I dyed my hair blue. My first outing with the new hair was with the whole group. I went all out on my makeup and outfit and was pretty stoked on it. I'm not exaggerating in the slightest when I say the asshole made 20+ jokes about my hair in the span of about 15 minutes. It was pretty much every time he interacted with me, which he seemed to go out of his way to do specifically so he could make jokes about my hair. If you've ever had blue hair, then you've probably heard most of the jokes he was making. I laughed along for the first few. I can definitely handle banter as it's a huge part of almost all of my friendships, but after about 20 jokes I finally said it was getting old and asked if he had anything nice to say. He responded by making another 5 jokes with a big shit-eating grin on his face and implied I was too sensitive. There truly was no off switch with the guy. Anyways, just wanted you all to know I'm not crazy. The asshole has literally been trying to drive me mad for at least a year and it almost worked. My partner and I have had many conversations about all this, and I know a lot of people had a lot to say about him, but please know this was eating both of us alive. He wanted to make things work so badly, he wanted to at least try to salvage their 20+ year friendship. But he understands now that was never possible, and he knows neither of us deserve to be treated the way the asshole treated us. This was never just about me. If he was a good friend to my partner, maybe things would be different and we could have tried harder to get through to him, but this is just who he is at his core. He's known for being a prick for no reason and lying about it. And there's no space in either of our lives for that. Anyways, I doubt the asshole can top that message, so this is the last update I'll give. My partner and I are coming out of this way stronger. The asshole has completely brainwashed my friend, and I've made my peace with it. She can have him, lol. Godspeed to the both of them. Thanks to all who showed understanding. Hopefully this is all going to be behind us very soon, once the dust fully settles. Comment: It all sounds like he was jealous of you and was threatened by your relationship with your fiancé. He probably felt that you were taking his best friend away from him. Just a quick question. Did you date your fiancé before or after your ex-best friend started dating? It's just that if they started after you, he could have done it to punish you and take her away from you or to make sure he stayed close to your fiancé. Also, did it ever cross your mind that your ex-best friend was in love with him, because his behavior sounds indicative of a jealous ex-lover? I'm not saying that your fiancé was in love with him, or even did anything with him, only that his ex-best friend's feelings could have been one-sided and not known to your fiancé. Anyway, I hope that you two can concentrate on your wedding now that the toxic people are out of your life and that you both have a wonderful future together and a beautifully unforgettable wedding. Update me if your toxic ex-best friends do anything else, but I honestly hope that they don't. OOP, the asshole met my friend through me. And I truly don't think he was in love with my partner, just loved to control him. He tries to control everyone around him. Proposed to my girlfriend of 4 years, she said no because it wasn't a surprise. Now I'm wondering if we're on the same page about marriage. Original post. I'll start by saying I love my girlfriend a lot, but she is definitely high maintenance. We've been talking about getting married for a couple of years now, but I wanted to wait until I knew a wedding was something we could afford. I finally got a promotion and she found stable employment, so I went out and bought a ring. We went on a vacation last week. The whole trip was very romantic, and I proposed to her on the beach, which I thought she would have wanted. Turns out she expected it all along because the trip was so romantic and she said no. She wants me to try again but wants it to be a surprise this time. She also wants a photographer to be there to capture the moment. It was pretty fucking embarrassing when a few people came up to us to congratulate us and she was explaining why she said no. I'm not sure what to do. She wanted it to be a surprise but also wanted me to propose as soon as I felt ready to. We also talked about her ideal engagement, and it's on a beach, yes, seriously. In a forest or in a field. I can't imagine any possible scenario where I could surprise her at one of those locations. She is not the outdoorsy type, so it'd be unlikely she would be in any of those locations anyways. I explained my frustration to her and she just said, well, if you want to get married you will find a way to make it work. It seems so bratty and immature and I'm not sure how to deal with her now. I'm still really pissed off about it. What should I do about this? Am I wrong to be pissed off? TL.ER. Proposed to my girlfriend but she said no because it wasn't a surprise and there wasn't a photographer there to capture the moment. Only wants to get engaged if the proposal fits a very specific image she has. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Your girlfriend doesn't sound nearly mature enough to get married. Take this as a sign of your life to come and get out. OOP. I think you're right. I had been trying to justify it for her, but judging by the overwhelming response I should probably break it off. Comment 2. Ask your good friends their truthful opinion on her, and make sure to let them know that they won't get a backlash for saying something bad. They know better than us. OOP. My friends can't stand her. Comment 3. Take the ring back to the jeweler. Does she want an engagement or does she want a marriage? I can totally see bridezilla growing on her already. Yikes. OOP. Yeah, that's another thing. When we were talking about her dream proposal, she was showing me her Pinterest for her dream wedding, and it's full of stuff we won't ever be able to afford. I told her it's unlikely our wedding would be like that, but we could still make it nice, and she said she'd rather wait till we can afford her dream wedding. Comment 4. And by rather wait, I suspect she means nag you about either getting a better job or taking out a loan to pay for what she wants. Don't do this to yourself, man. OOP. Yeah, she told me I could start selling some of the furniture I make, which is something I do as a hobby that she wants me to turn into a second job. Update. Here's a link to my last post, but it got deleted. To summarize, I proposed to my GF on a nice vacation and she rejected it because she knew it was coming and there wasn't a photographer. Thank you all for your comments and messages. Sorry I couldn't respond to most, but I read them all. I decided to try and talk about it with her one last time before throwing in the towel. I wasn't really expecting much, but I just wanted to see if she'd see my side. She lives with me, so I wanted to end things on a good note. She didn't understand at all. She was still saying I needed to work for it and she wasn't taking me seriously, so I broke up with her. Then she told me she accepts my proposal and we're just going through a rough patch, but we will work it out. She was really trying to get me to change my mind and was promising me she would be better to me. She completely ignored me every time I told her we're breaking up and was always yelling over me about how we were going to work things out now that we're engaged, and eventually I just got tired and went to sleep, thinking it was perfectly clear that it was over. I woke up Saturday to a whole bunch of messages. She found the ring and took a pic with it announcing our engagement and tagged me in it on Facebook. We got into another huge fight and eventually I just called her parents and told them to come pick up all her shit or it's going to the dump as soon as she leaves. They were surprisingly understanding. Her dad seemed really embarrassed by her, but they were a huge help. I know it's illegal to do that and I was supposed to actually evict her, but she got seriously violent and I didn't want her in my house anymore. She smashed my iPad and knocked my PlayStation off the TV stand and both are completely broken, so I didn't want to wait around and see what else she would do. She wouldn't even give me the ring back. Her dad had to guilt her into it. It was pretty pathetic. So that's the end of us. Really sucks I wasted the last 4 years with her, but I guess it was better to get out now. It's nice that I can hang out with all my friends again. A girl I'm friends with asked me out on a date, so that's what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm actually pretty nervous. I know it's way too early, but even if it doesn't work out, it should be fun to start dating again. TLDR, broke up with GF, and she decided that meant we were engaged. Then she threw a fit and broke my iPad and PlayStation relevant comments. Comment 1. A girl I'm friends with asked me out on a date, so that's what I'm doing tomorrow. Too soon, bro. OOP. She knows the entire situation. It's not serious. She told me years ago she had a crush on me, but we're good friends now. Who knows what will happen. Comment 2. Perhaps this is why your crazy ex did not like your girlfriends. OP. Yeah, that's what started it. I don't blame my girlfriend for that. I shut my friend down then and told my girlfriend about it because I didn't want to keep things from her. I don't think I did anything wrong in that situation, but after that she didn't want me talking to any women. My fiancé proposed while I was on the toilet, and my friends called it weird. Now I'm questioning if our sweet engagement story was really awkward. Original post. It's not as bad as it sounds. My friends are just obsessed with that part. I think. Fake names. My 32F fiancé Peter, 30M, had arranged a candlelight dinner in a hotel room. There were flowers, rose petals, and music. There was my favorite dinner and my favorite dessert. Peter was in a tuxedo. I was wearing a dress. That evening was so amazing. While I was eating, my IBS started acting up. I ran to the bathroom. It was mortifying, but at least I was comfortable enough with Peter to allow him to come in. I was apologizing for ruining our evening while I was on the toilet, and he said it's okay. I felt like he wanted to ask me to marry him the whole evening. I told him I love him, and he said I love you too. I told him, I'm sure you'll take care of me in sickness and in health. That comment made Peter smile and he got down on one knee. I didn't care that this was the situation. I was so happy to say yes. I felt like he wouldn't have asked that evening if I didn't say the sickness and health comment. I told my best friend Kate, 33F, and another friend Bailey, 33F. I told them the truth. Kate said it's weird, creepy, and an asshole move on his part. I explained that he likely would have put it off if I didn't mean the health comment. Kate said I was desperate, and that I should have some respect for myself. Bailey said, if I thought Peter would ask another time, then I should have let him ask another time. Before talking to them, I thought I had the sweetest proposal story. Now I feel like an asshole who caused my amazing fiancé to have a terrible story. Am I the asshole? Update and further context. The proposal happened on Saturday, and I had been holding off telling my parents and Peter's parents. Both sets of parents live in a different state. Tonight, we told my parents first via video chat. My parents are Bob, 58M, and Susan, 58F. My mom is a massive fan of romance, and I knew she would ask about the proposal. Peter and I told my parents the whole proposal story. My mom was over the moon. She said proposing like that is better than any idea she had. My dad said it just proves the love Peter has for me. My mom asked if she could tell others, and I said sure. I had asked my mom to be my maid of honor. After getting engaged, my pick for maid of honor was either going to be Kate or my mom. I didn't pick my mom to spite Kate. I'm not punishing Kate. Kate's initial reaction to the proposal story would just make her being the maid of honor awkward. Plus my mom is so happy with our union, and she would love to plan a wedding. Then we told Peter's parents via video chat. His parents are Chuck, 55M, and Linda, 59F. His parents really appreciated the comedy. Chuck thanked us for giving them the gift of telling that amazing story, if we're comfortable with that. I told him we're confused. Linda said she's so happy for us. Peter told his father that he wants him to be the best man. Lastly, we told Peter's sister Juliana, 27F, via video chat as she lives in another state. She had her father's sense of humor. I hope Kate and Bailey will be bridesmaids. Yes, Kate and Bailey are single. I have been best friends with Kate since the 9th grade, so this little disagreement wouldn't ruin our friendship. Further update. Kate and Bailey both agreed to be bridesmaids when I asked via message. Kate apologized via message, and she also sent me a video of her apologizing. Kate said she appreciates that I'm still letting her be a key part of the wedding. She said that after several days of thinking about the proposal, she realizes how loving it was. She said if she had IBS, she would appreciate a guy who treats her like how Peter treats me. Bailey apologized via message. Her apology was brief, and she admitted in it that Kate told her to apologize. Update. Thank you to all the amazing people who gave me support on my original post. After Kate's apology message and apology video, I messaged back that I forgave her with a link to my original post. She said she really wanted to talk face to face. We went to the gym today even though I was feeling like I was going to get an IBS flare-up. We talked while we worked out. Kate said that she was upset when she heard my proposal story, and that she didn't understand why she was so upset at the time. She confessed that when she had processed her feelings, she realized it was intense jealousy. Kate revealed to me, for the first time, that she was diagnosed with IBS a few months ago. She said hers is not as severe as mine. She said this has been a scary time for her, especially since she has watched me suffer so much from it all these years. Kate said she would want that proposal for herself. She said she wishes she could be that comfortable with a man. She said the comments on my original post made her feel hopeful. She said looking up on IBS more online has made her feel hopeful as well. Kate had explicitly asked me to make this upset post. She apologized again. She said she's glad that my mom is the maid of honor instead of her. She said she's happy for me but also very jealous. Kate says that despite the fact Bailey had sent an apology message too, Bailey still feels awkward talking to me. Kate said that Bailey will come around, that Bailey is just too embarrassed right now after how she acted. I asked Kate if she looked up how common IBS is and she said she looked that up after seeing the comments in my original post. She said she was shocked by how common it is. She said she was avoiding learning about it as she was scared of what she might find. I made sure to tell her that a guy has never dumped me over my IBS. She knows that I had messed around with an embarrassing amount of guys before meeting Peter. I told Kate the reason those hookups never progressed to anything real was because I was too ashamed to let a guy see the IBS part of my life. I told Kate that the person who told me I was ugly and nasty more than anyone was myself. Kate said she hasn't mentally adjusted to this yet but she thinks she can. I told her she's my best friend, I love her, and that I will help her through this. I made a joke about poopy girls having to stick together. That made her smile. After the gym, I rushed home to the toilet to deal with the IBS flare-up I felt coming. To no one's surprise, Peter took care of me when he came home from work. He even helped me to take a bath as I was experiencing so much discomfort. I want everyone to know, Kate has been an amazing friend to me. The disagreement that was at the center of my original post was extremely out of character for her. I had made that post asking if I was wrong because Kate has always been very reasonable. Even with IBS, I'm happy. I have amazing friends, an amazing family, and obviously an amazing fiancé. So if you don't hear much from me on Reddit, don't worry. I'm probably just living an amazing life, even when I'm stuck on the toilet. Update 2. Right now, I'm suffering from one of the worst IBS flare-ups of my life. Plus I have one whopper of a cold. But I have good news. Both Kate and Bailey visited me. Bailey now knows about Kate's IBS from Kate. I was so sick I was laying in bed when my friends visited. Peter was there to help me, of course. Bailey actually cried as she gave her first face-to-face apology for her reaction to my proposal story. She apologized to both Peter and I. She even hugged me despite the fact that I have a cold. Peter and I both accepted Bailey's apology. I told Bailey that she doesn't have to be embarrassed to talk to me. My friends and I talked for a little while before I needed to go to the bathroom. They wished me well before leaving. Peter took care of me, of course. I'm glad that I'm on good terms with both of my closest friends. OOP posted to AMA, I am an IBS girl and I'm getting married to a man who accepts me. AMA, September 25, 2024. I'm a 32-year-old with horrible IBS. I'm getting married to a 30-year-old man who loves me in sickness and in health. My fiancé is the sweetest, as he didn't let my sickness ruin his proposal. I had to rush to the bathroom during our dinner in our hotel room, and he asked me to marry him while I was on the toilet. He probably would have done it another time, but I made hints that I knew he wanted to propose. I'm incredibly happy. At this very moment, I'm suffering from both an IBS flare-up and a cold, so I have time for a Q&A. Ask me anything. After my dad remarried, he neglected me and prioritized his new family, making me feel like a guest in his home. Am I the jerk for resenting him? When I was younger, I had a great relationship with my father. My parents split when I was an infant, although I spent the week with my mother and weekends with my father. My father and I were like best friends, and we had a set schedule every weekend. We'd grab 5 Redbox DVDs to watch over the weekend, go fishing, play soccer, and bike to a hidden playground near the zoo. I was also used to my father constantly having different girlfriends, none of whom lasted more than 2 weeks. The only one who stayed longer was a woman I admired, who was there for 2 years. She left my father when I was 10. Despite this, my relationship with my father remained unchanged until I was 12, when he met his current wife. This woman had 2 children, one older and one younger than myself. They moved into my father's apartment after just 2 weeks. My room was already small, but my tiny mattress and 3 small plastic drawers were pushed into the corner to make way for my daughter's bunk bed and dresser. Before I knew it, they began putting my bed in a closet while I wasn't present and frequently forgot to take it out when I came to visit. When my father moved into a larger house, the older sister received her own room, whereas I had to share one with the younger sister every weekend. The 3 small drawers I had were quickly reduced to just one because my younger sister wanted the other 2 for toys. I gradually began to visit my father less frequently. Things got extremely bad when my father got his girlfriend pregnant. After a year, they married, and I had no idea for a month because he hadn't told me. I also had no idea my newborn half-sister was born until weeks after she returned home from the hospital. To make his new family happy, my father began indulging them and stopped paying child support to me and my mother. His non-working wife cooks, cleans, and shops, while my father pays for her older daughter's college tuition. The younger daughter is the epitome of a 10-year-old Sephora child. My half-sister is still a toddler, but she is plainly spoiled and hates the word no. My father and I had a routine that is no longer in place. My stepfather has been with my mother since I was 5. Apparently, though I don't remember it, I once called him Dad. And as a result, my father told me not to love him like a father since he isn't my father. I believe this is why I began acting as if I despised my stepfather. I had no idea why I felt that way toward him because he has always been nothing but nice to me. In recent years, I've felt considerably closer to him. He feels like the father my biological father should be. Over time, my father began to treat me differently. He rants to me about his political opinions, conspiracy theories regarding aliens, and other topics. He also boasts about his new business and family. If I try to share anything with him, he gets upset and shuts me down, instead continuing with his own story. It appears that he now considers me a friend rather than his daughter. In recent years, I've learned that my parents' divorce wasn't because they weren't compatible, but because my father cheated on my mother while visiting his family in Canada. I am now 15 years old and have changed drastically from the person my birth father remembers. I used to enjoy the beach and soccer, but now I prefer music, reading and writing. Since 2022 I have written and published 2 books, and I am currently working on the 3rd in my series. My stepfather believes in my dreams and loves me so much that he brags about me to friends and family, referring to me as his daughter. He also has a biological daughter, who I adore like a true sister, but she lives up north with her boyfriend, so I don't see her very frequently. Nonetheless, I adore them more than my biological father and half-sister, with whom I'm actually linked. My father blames me for not phoning him, but given how he has treated me recently, I don't feel like I owe him that. I also go months without seeing him anymore since I no longer feel at ease in that place. Especially because the bed I sleep on is actually their guest bed. I am a guest at my birth father's house. Because of this, I resent my father. I haven't informed anyone how I feel, so no one is calling me a jerk, but I'm wondering if I am. My father appears content with his new family, and I'm left wondering whether it's terrible that I'm not glad for him. Am I the jerk? Update 1. Hello. I wrote a post a few months ago about how my father has stopped treating me as his daughter now that he has a new family. Not much has changed since then, but here's an update nevertheless. Since my initial post, I've only been to my father's place once. It's safe to say that I'm just an uncomfortable guest in their house. I should begin by mentioning that whenever I go a few months without visiting, my father attempts to appear innocent. He phones me every Friday to inquire when he should pick me up. I never answer because he always calls while I'm in class or studying. So he phones my mother, but because he never asks in advance, I usually have plans on weekends with my cousins, friends, or just writing, as I am still working on my 3rd novel, which requires a lot of focus that I can't get at his house. Actually, I'm just going to name him Eric. He hasn't been much of a father figure to me, unlike my stepfather. Anyway, my mother decided I'd go over to his house, despite the fact that Eric hasn't paid child support in over 2 years, and I despise coming there. My mother suggests that I pay him a visit every now and then to keep him out of trouble with the courts. She sometimes confuses me, claiming he's a deadbeat, but also that he's a loving father who deserves to be respected. However, given the circumstances, I'm very convinced nothing would have changed because I seldom visit him and he doesn't pay child support anyhow. In instance, one Christmas, he purchased and wrapped a large number of new items for his family. When I was visiting him a few weeks before Christmas, he drove to Walmart to get his wife some food. He handed me $200 and said, "Merry Christmas, buy yourself something, and the rest can be used for child support or whatever." I purchased 2 books, but the remainder of the money, which was supposed to be child support, was far from what he owed. I've told my mother that I'd be happy if he lost custody of me and my stepfather adopted me, but she feels that's too severe, saying, "He's still your father, he deserves your respect and love." Now it was the weekend, and I paid him a visit. From the moment Eric picked me up, he only talked about his new family. He discussed the older sister and her boyfriend, the younger sister and her shopping, and my half-sister, who can now speak a little. I remained mute until he asked me about school. When I responded, he became upset and launched into a conspiracy theory rant. I ignored him for the rest of the drive. The rest of the weekend wasn't any better. The older sister did what she always does when I visit. She locked herself in her room and only came out when I left the home or went to the bathroom to avoid having to talk to me. The younger sister had a friend over, and her friend threw her belongings on my bed and sat on it because that is where she sleeps when she has sleepovers. Eric's wife did a bad job of concealing her displeasure with my presence. She was often taken aback by my presence because Eric had not informed her in advance, so she couldn't argue. Eric spent most of the weekend taking me and my half-sister to a playground where she could run around with her friends. I sat on a seat to read, but I didn't have much time for myself because Eric kept leaving and telling me to keep an eye on my half-sister, who is a wild and fussy child. I am not a babysitter, and while I am wonderful with children, that doesn't mean I relish devoting my own time to caring for them when they are not my duty. I had to spend 2 days in either utter commotion or discomfort, and I told my mother that I didn't want to go over there anymore. She said everything was all right and that she would not force me to leave, but I don't believe her because she has said it before. I don't have someone to talk to about it and the whole scenario is freaking me out. I don't recall my father ever being as happy as he is today, yet I still feel like I should be glad for him. I don't know what to do, so any guidance would be appreciated. Everyone who posted on my last article claimed I'm not a jerk and Eric isn't acting like a father should, but he still reaches out from time to time and calls me his baby girl, whom he adores. I almost cry when he says that because it reminds me of how we used to be. Am I overthinking this or overreacting? What shall I do? Am I a jerk for not being pleased for my father? You should inform your mother that the more she compels you to go to your father's, the worse your relationship with her will get, because she is not listening to what you want or how you feel. You should also tell her that you no longer trust what she says, because she has previously stated that she will not force you to leave, but she does anyway. If you can't talk to your mother, talk to your stepfather about it and see if he can help. Update 2. Hello everyone. It's only been a few days since I last posted. Since then, I've followed most of your advice and spoken with my mother about not wanting to be compelled to visit Eric. My sperm donor, as most of you referred to him. Long story short, I'm not certain she won't keep sending me over to Eric's place, but she did end up sending him long texts chastising him for not treating me properly and ordering him to step up and pay child support. He didn't respond to her, so I took some other advice and sent him a lengthy text outlining how I felt about his treatment of me over the prior few years. As soon as I sent the text, he called to shout at me. He called me spoiled and overdramatic, stating it's my fault we don't have a relationship because I don't visit or communicate with him anymore. And because I cited the unpaid child support, he accused me of merely asking for money. I almost sobbed throughout that phone call and ended up hanging up on him. He also wrote some angry texts to my mother, but later that day, he left a voicemail on my phone saying, "Money is so tight for me right now. I'm completely broke. You are aware of my feelings for you, correct?" The trouble is, I know it's a lie since I always see my younger stepsister posting TikTok videos showing off the Sephora and other expensive items dad gets her. I believe I'm done trying. Some of you suggested I seek my stepfather for help. I wish I could, but when I asked my mother again if he could adopt me, she replied something that broke me completely. Apparently, my stepfather has stated that he does not feel he should adopt me. My stepfather is really nice and compassionate, but he is also incredibly non-confrontational, and he believes that adopting me would be a slap in the face to Eric. Also, to clear up any confusion from the comments on my last update, my parents' divorce was not due to his current wife. My parents separated when I was a baby, and Eric resided in Canada, where he moved from woman to girlfriend before moving here. When I was 12, Dad met and knocked up his wife, Alejandra, and married her without informing me until a month after their courthouse wedding. In case you're wondering, my age is 15. It feels silly that I am experiencing this level of stress at my age, and I don't feel comfortable discussing it with anyone. I can't talk to my stepfather since he's usually working, and when he comes home, my mother is also around, which I dislike talking to. She often tells me I'm too young to feel the way I do. The last time I attempted to address my mental health with Mom, I asked if I could begin therapy, and she said therapists are stupid, and I should simply talk to her or pray to God if something was wrong. I'm not religious, and discussing serious issues with her makes me very uncomfortable. It's not that I don't love her. After all, she's my mother, but she's quite intense and scary. My father has not contacted me again after his voicemail. Frankly, I don't want to think about him for a long time. If he suddenly understands how severely he has messed up with me and apologizes, maybe I will try to repair our connection. My stepfather may not wish to adopt me, but he still refers to me as his daughter rather than simply his stepdaughter, and I actually feel loved by him. I adore his parents like they are my own grandparents, and his entire family is kind and loving. I might post another update if anything else happens, but for now, I'm going to concentrate on school and my books. Maybe now that I understand Eric no longer cares about me, I can finally focus on writing my third novel. I dedicated my first book to him, and I do not regret it. I dedicated that work to the father he once was. It's unlikely he'll ever read it because he doesn't think it's sensible for me to want to be a writer, but I don't care, I'm done. Thank you to everyone who offered advice and assured me that I wasn't a jerk. Update 3. There were so many individuals asking identical questions that it was overwhelming, so I didn't react to any of them immediately. But first, I'll answer those queries before moving on to the real cause for this update. A number of you suggested that I talk to a school counselor or whatever. The trouble is, I do virtual homeschool, and my mother works from home a lot, so I'm honestly too terrified to try it. Plus, even if I talk to my counselor without my mother present, I don't trust adults to keep such things private. I know that seems silly and worrisome, but it's just how my mind works. A number of you also suggested that I bring up the therapy issue with my mother again, but I know it won't work. My mother does not believe in treatment and feels that praying to God or having her preach the Bible to me will resolve everything. As for my stepfather, I adore him and see him as my genuine father, even if he refuses to adopt me. But he is also no help with the treatment issue because he constantly agrees with anything my mother says to avoid arguments. But I'm doing well right now, and I believe things will improve soon. I believe this because I am confident that my mother will eventually petition for sole custody and court-ordered child support. When my parents split, they arranged for custody and child support amongst themselves. The agreement was that I would spend weekends with my father, and he would pay my mother $100 per week. I believe my father just kept that commitment to keep himself looking nice until he could complete his legalization procedure in the United States, as he was a Canadian immigrant. When he was legalized, he stopped paying child support and began indulging his new family. Anyway, I visited my father's place last weekend. This time, my mother did not compel me, and I chose to go because I wanted to give my father one final chance. He took me up from my mother's place and we weren't even down the block when we started fighting. I was excitedly telling him about my business idea of making book boxes and selling books with DIY necklaces and hand-painted bookmarks that matched the book covers. He called my concept dumb, unprofitable, and a waste of money and time. It was an hour's trip to his place, and he became political or upset at everything I said. When I told him I was thinking about applying to institutions like Harvard or the University of Chicago in the future, he became enraged about all the dangerous Cuban and Mexican immigrants in Chicago. He also claimed that Harvard is a waste of time and only famous because rich people go there. I ended up roaring back at him, telling him that he couldn't be so arrogant about non-white immigrants when he was once an immigrant himself. Also, I've never understood why my father is so bigoted toward Hispanics, despite the fact that both my mother and his current wife are Latina. He went on one rant after another, and I was so tired of it that, instead of remaining silent like I usually do, I objected. Because of this, my father spent the entire weekend talking about my bad attitude. I told my mom about everything. I believe the final nail in the coffin that prompted my mother to seek sole custody was when I informed her about my father's rant about the differences between men and women. I ended up memorizing and writing down everything he said, then texting it to my mother. I implored her not to talk to him about it, but she was furious with him. Here's some of what he said. 99% of women want to latch on to rich men. Nearly all women are greedy and unloyal. Men don't like successful and independent women because they're prideful and bossy. It's more important for a wife to respect her husband than for him to respect her. Or it's wrong for wives to make more than their husbands. And so much more. He smiled and added, "But you're the exception, pretty girl." There was so much more that happened just last weekend, such as him saying that some of my guy friends aren't real men because they're gay, and attempting to convince me that my summer volunteering opportunity in the Dominican Republic is a bad idea because the people there are different, despite the fact that my mother's family is from there. I won't go into every annoying thing he did, but I'm finally done. This was his final chance, and he wasted it. I simply wanted to mention that I'm quite sure my mother isn't sending me over there anymore. She spent the entire morning looking for my birth certificate, wondering if she needed it for court. She wants full custody, and if my father paid child support, it would greatly assist me prepare for college. He currently owes a significant amount of child support. Also, I didn't include the names of my books in the postings because I didn't want a bunch of internet strangers to see my social media tags on the back of the book, but I will share the titles with anyone who directly messages me. If anything else happens, I'll most likely post another update. Hopefully, my next report will come after we've been to court. You are not the jerk. Divorce and parenting are difficult. Your biological father sounds like a jerk. He is entirely failing you. I understand why your mother and stepfather want you to establish a relationship with your biological father. It is one of the things parents are urged to do throughout divorce because it is usually better for the children. If your parents obtained a court order granting your biological father weekend visitation, your mother could face legal consequences if you did not visit him. Your stepfather cannot adopt you unless your biological father's parental rights are dissolved by a court, and if your biological father challenges it, things will get messy. Your stepfather's reluctance to undertake such a legal struggle while you are still considered a minor makes sense. I'd wager that it has nothing to do with his affections for you. He expresses his affection for you and your position in his heart every day. He is already your father, so you don't need him to adopt you. Please do not let his fears about the legal situation make you believe he loves you any less. I'm delighted your mother is going for both full custody and child support. Your biological father has to be held accountable. I'm so sad that you lost your biological father. He may be alive, but he is no longer the parent he once was. However, keep in mind that you played no part in this. He's just focusing all of his energy on the woman who, let's say, meets his physical wants, and leaving it at that. It's a regrettably prevalent issue. Ex-wife who cheated and abandoned her family shows up years later, with another man's child, begging for a second chance. What should I do? Some background here. I, 37 male, and Angela, 36, my ex-wife, had met in our mid-20s. We met when I was about 24 and we were employed by the same company. We were married after 2 years of dating, and 3 years into our marriage we had 2 kids, now 9 and 7 years old. Though I had told her it would be good with me if she did, I didn't want to put her through anything she didn't want, hence the second pregnancy was unexpected and she wasn't happy about it. She didn't kill it either. Things were still wonderful between us and we were as in love as we could have following our first daughter. After the second pregnancy though, that changed. She started to get rather irritated, sullen, and started to pick on our eldest or me consistently. Just realizing this was due to all the hormones, I tried to reconcile with this new Angela. After some time, we believed this would change. Instead, things just became worse. Around her, my daughter and I learnt to walk on eggshells. She was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom, but I was running everything. After our first child, she had quit her job of her own volition and done all the housework along with looking after our eldest while I worked till she fell pregnant for the second time. She claimed she was too weary to take care of our children and the house, hence we had to get a maid while she was pregnant. I consented, even though it was only somewhat outside our means since at the time I wasn't making enough. Especially considering Angela's pregnancy, I wanted not to trouble her too much. After our second daughter was born, I thought she would come back tending to the house and children throughout the day. Let me also state clearly that I was not among those men who neglected household chores. Though I was tired from working, I did anything I could to help out after returning from my job. I assumed she would take some time to heal after she delivered our younger daughter, but then we would go back to our regular life. Still, several months passed and she showed no change. She refused to help out around the house and stayed exactly as angry and agitated. She would simply spend all day seated at home watching TV. She hardly engaged in any activities with the children either. She would periodically pay our neighbor to drive them to the park. Though I wouldn't want to come across as hostile, I did feel that way as I was working day and night while she wouldn't even do the minimum at home. Additionally, proving somewhat costly for me to pay for a maid to do all the cooking, cleaning and other domestic tasks was, along with all the other bills, I had to look after and wanted to preserve money for our daughter's futures. Angela refused to assist me in any kind, hence that was practically impossible. After around 6 months following the birth of our younger daughter, I realized we could not continue like this and had to speak with Angela. Knowing this would be a challenging conversation, so I requested my parents to watch our girls for the day. They agreed. That day, I sat Angela down and told her I realized she was fatigued with 2 pregnancies, but I needed her to assist me and coordinate with me. I told her that we were finding a maid to be too costly, and I needed her to respect her word and return to at least some of the housework so we may renegotiate and cut the housekeeper's pay to save some money. She claimed she was too busy watching the children to handle any of the housework, so she turned down the proposal right away. She also advised me to start making more instead of justifying our financial condition by pointing out her guilt. Although I attempted to persuade her I was already doing my best, if we were to make this marriage work she needed to help too. I also mentioned how, from what I knew, she simply let the children watch television with her for hours while she watched tacky reality TV, neglecting their needs. The housekeeping had remarked to me casually this as well. She flared up and accused me of spying on her through the maid, so I quickly understood that bringing this up was a big mistake. Saying she was done being pushed about by me and forced to do all the labor while I purportedly did nothing except sit at a desk for a few hours each day, she went on a rant against me. Claiming I should be the man of the house, she then chastised me for asking her to help and blamed me for not being able to pay a maid. While I was the rational one expecting her to help the house, her charges were utterly nonsensical and she was merely grabbing at straws to give the impression that her not doing anything all day was normal. We finally got into a huge argument and she labeled me a loser unable to afford to be with a woman like her. Given how terrified our eldest daughter was of her, I responded by accusing her of being a lazy cow who had already failed at being a good mother. Now she was failing as a wife too. That comment definitely spoke to her, and she pushed me hard. I stumbled, fell back on the coffee table, broke the glass and hurt myself. I had to get hurried to the ER. She continued to apologize and weep all through, but fortunately my back was only mildly injured. She had to move out. I told her I no longer trusted her. Around the children, I couldn't trust her either as I had no idea when she could lose her fury once more and damage them as well. While Angela was still living, I urged our parents to look after our daughters. She kept protesting for a week, pledging she would never let something like that happen once more, but I couldn't believe her. She begged me to give her another chance. I almost filed for divorce. By the conclusion of the week, we decided she would receive therapy and go live with her parents for some period. I would let her move back in with us only once she had been vetted by a medical professional. She was willing to work on it and improve, thus clearly something was quite wrong with her since happy individuals do not act that way. I also wanted my girls to have their mother, hence I chose not to divorce her just yet and give our marriage another go. While we were living apart, we also began marriage counseling. But, ultimately it proved to be ineffective. She turned out to be cheating on me. Angela was living with her folks when my parents came in to help with my girls. We attended weekly marriage counseling sessions and for some time things looked to be improving. Her therapist contacted me as well. She informed me she had postpartum depression but was improving. Anger problems had been one of her symptoms. She had never had them before, but they became very out of hand when she pushed me. For both of us, that woke us awake. This continued for about a year and around 6 months in there I even let her visit our girls under my direction. It delighted me to watch her gradually returning to her old self. At last, our circumstances seemed better and we could really make it work. She then abruptly quit showing up for our counseling appointments without giving any reason though. She stopped answering me as well, but given her therapist kept me informed, I knew she was progressing. It did not make sense to me. I persisted in attempting to talk to her for weeks, but she would simply blow me off claiming she needed some alone time. At last, after almost 3 months of her avoiding me, I paid her a visit at her parents' house. Her parents disliked me and blamed me for her actions, thus I hadn't done that previously. They thought I was the one who had driven their daughter insane and produced such behavior. Angela had advised me it would be better if I skipped seeing her while she was living with them since it would simply cause more drama, the last thing we wanted. She had been acting aloof and skipping counseling appointments, hence I disregarded that guideline and paid them nevertheless. She seemed indifferent even when she did sporadically come up, and I simply could not understand it. She insisted everything was good whether I tried personally speaking with her, on the phone, or even by text. But her behavior made it abundantly evident she was hiding something from me. When I arrived at her parents' place, I thought she would be there but she wasn't. Her parents slammed the door in my face when I asked where she was and said they were not permitted to tell me. I had a nasty feeling about it since I could tell they were loving the circumstances. So, standing before their house, I made the decision to phone Angela. My paranoia was developing as I tried phoning her several times, but she didn't answer. Desperate, I resolved to try to go inside myself by slipping around the house. Knowing her parents typically kept the kitchen door open, I headed around to the backyard. But I didn't have to travel that far since Angela was seated on a swing in the backyard. The bad news was that she was making out with a man I didn't know, not alone. Because that was the most terrible event of my life, that instant is etched in my head. The man went away as soon as he noticed me, and by the time Angela looked around I was already headed back to my car. I was in total shock, hence she caught up with me and tried to stop me, but I was not hearing anything she was saying. I shook her off and warned her not to touch me when she tried to grab me. She neglected, thus I got in my automobile and headed home. I told my parents I wanted them to hire a lawyer for me and blocked Angela everywhere as soon as I got home so she wouldn't have an opportunity to explain. When I paid Angela's parents a visit, I told them of what I had recently seen. She never contacted me once again until we had to visit the court-appointed mediator for our divorce settlement. By then I had essentially become a robot, totally shut off emotionally but driven only for the benefit of my girls. Even when I learned Angela was entering her parental rights, I felt nothing. She had decided she wanted to be with the guy, let's call him Sean, who I saw her with instead of with us. He was her friend from childhood. Although they had drifted apart during high school, they got back together when she moved back home with her parents. Apparently she had developed feelings for him. Her parents apparently encouraged this, hence it's likely why they didn't object to her kissing him in their backyard even though she is a married woman with 2 kids. Apparently, they had always wanted her to wind up with Sean, and they were glad Angela was at last choosing herself and her own happiness, as if she had ever been capable of doing anything other than that. She wanted to qualify for alimony, hence the divorce was a protracted procedure even though she had been cheating on me. Though it took some time, my attorney and I battled valiantly to ensure she received nothing in the divorce. Since I had been the one paying for everything while she watched TV at home, it was all rightly mine. The divorce was finalized 5 years ago, and we were successful in ensuring she left empty-handed. Though I knew I couldn't break since I had to look after my girls, who had nobody but me, the months I spent handling the divorce were some of the toughest periods I had. I can never enough thank my parents for being there for me when I balanced job and childcare. They are quite helpful and supportive. 5 years have gone by, and although at first the divorce seemed like the worst thing that could happen to me, I am glad for it today. Had I not chosen to leave Angela, I do not see myself where I am right now. Since then, life has given me good treatment. In every sense, I am in a far better place. We moved into a larger house since I make more now and I have no more responsibility for anyone except my girls. Although they live nearby, my parents only pay occasional visits. My daughters are as delighted as could be, and I have friends that love me. All a man needs is that. I am so grateful to the universe that everything is working for me. At least, it was until Angela reappeared a few days ago. The doorbell rang when the children were at school and I was ready to head off to work. Angela was outside standing with a boy less than 3 or 4 years old at her side. This has to be Angela's son, I knew. Her standing at my door startled me, and I was still processing it when she started crying. She came here, she informed me, to atone and right things with me. She declared she was at last ready to be a family once more and offer our marriage another shot. She was returning after all these years, eager to give our marriage another try as if it were up to her to make that choice. It still astounds me. I chose in a short second to shut the door and turn her away since I wanted to avoid whatever this was. I informed her earlier that this was no longer her family. The day she broke off contact with Sean, I had stopped being her husband. She had given up custody of her daughter, hence she had no right to speak to us as her family. The divorce was only a legal requirement. I closed the door after saying that and instructed her to go as I wanted her nowhere close to my property. Though I was very furious and could have cursed her as well, I held back since the small child made me hesitate. For a few minutes after I closed her out, I could hear her crying outside my door. I chose to ignore it. I headed off to work once I confirmed the coast was free. I tried very hard not to think about it as I couldn't afford to let it happen and it would only sap my will. I nearly forgot that Angela had even shown up at my house, but as soon as I got back from work, my parents called me asking why I had sent her away. Angela had been heartbroken, they told me, having contacted them following my closing of the door on her. Since she was in the process of divorcing Sean and at last had an opportunity to make things right with me, my parents disclosed they were the ones who had provided her my new address and urged her to visit me. They informed me Angela had contacted them roughly 1 month ago and that this had been under development for some time. My parents thought it was about time I considered my children since my daughters deserved a mother and in their view Angela was the best mother available. They thus determined she deserved another shot and sent her my address and with guidance on what to say to me. I took great offense at them. Not even asking if I would be comfortable with it, it was not their position to pardon her or determine she deserved another shot. If the children had been home, it may have been quite dangerous, so their pulling of something like this was reckless. They denied that they had made a mistake even as I corrected them. They claimed they had an equal right to decide what was best for the girls since they had taken care of the kids and aided me during my divorce. They also said they still periodically look after them. They thought it pointless whether or not I wanted to fix things with Angela since they had influence in the situation as well. Their belief in that seemed ludicrous to me. My daughters are mine, not hers at the end of the day. Although I value my parents and will always be appreciative of what they did during the divorce, I do not believe it was their place to let Angela re-enter my life. We argued a little, but they felt that by not giving Angela another opportunity, I was the one acting selfishly. They assured me they had done their due research and she was a different woman now, deserving of living with my girls. They claimed it was offensive to consider they would endanger my girls or me even when I informed them she had signed her rights away. Being too conceited to realize that my daughters needed their mother, they said I was destroying their life. It has been a couple days now, and I do not believe I was selfish or out of line. I have given this much thought. Update 1. Angela arrived up to my home with her son approximately a week ago, and lately I learned the truth about her connection with her parents. Since I'm still trying to understand it personally and I honestly find it so upsetting not even knowing where to start. How all of them have deceived me without thinking twice is unbelievable. Apparently, my parents had been in communication with Angela all along in addition to telling her my new address. After the divorce, I cut her off from my life, but they hadn't since they thought she would visit at some time. They hardly spoke, just once a month perhaps, but that was plenty for me to feel cheated from. After Angela was handed the divorce papers, Sean had Angela sign away her rights. He had set her an ultimatum. Either keep in contact with her children and battle for custody, therefore leaving him behind, or ditch her family and establish a new life with him. According to my parents, she had had a tough decision. She chose Sean and opted to start a new family with him rather than remain with the one she already knew. Angela had contacted her parents soon after I filed for divorce to explain her circumstances and request their assistance since she still wanted to keep intimate contact with her children. She said she felt driven into a position by both Sean pushing her to completely forsake her children and me advocating for full custody with supervised visits. Her prospects of obtaining partial custody were low even if she battled for custody and opposed Sean because of the circumstances of our divorce and her history of anger management problems. Her time and money seemed wasted fighting for custody. Should she choose to battle, she had a very real risk losing Sean and custody of our girls in the end. My parents entered at that point. Angela visited with them individually and essentially begged them to let her keep contact with our girls. She asked them to be a link between her and the children, thereby helping her out. Angela understood she would lose any visitation rights once she signed away her parental rights. As their grandparents, my parents intended to take advantage of their visiting rights though. By going behind my back to let Angela meet our girls, they effectively misled me for years. Saying Angela's plight resonated with them, they explained their behavior as they couldn't, in good conscience, keep a mother apart from her children. Still, stabbing their own son in the rear seemed to have no effect on their conscience at all. They acknowledged that Angela would be invited over and allowed to spend time with them anytime I left the children off at their place. My parents would pay my daughters toys and candy to be quiet, hence they never told me they were seeing their mother. My girls would tell me they played games with their grandparents and their friend anytime I asked what they had done at their grandparents' house. I always assumed they were referring to my parents' real friends, whom I already knew, but apparently my parents had told my daughters to call their mother the friend should I ask about their day. Although I couldn't believe my girls had been lying to me. I pardoned them since Angela and my parents had obviously coerced and threatened them into silence. It's only for kids. I asked my daughters whether they had been meeting their mother behind my back once I found the truth out from my parents. They began to cry and informed me they felt they would be punished by God should they say anything, so they were unable to say anything. Angela and my dad have to have really hammered it into their minds that telling me the truth would have disastrous results. They had been so evasive and covert all along for this reason. For never asking my girls which of their parents' friends they had been seeing, I also felt like a bad father. I never would have known. It could have been someone deadly simply. But since I am receiving a restraining order against all of them, I am ending this right now. Since my parents emailed me confessing everything following our argument, I already had written evidence. They thought the email would help me to understand Angela's desperation to be a mother to her daughters while juggling her relationship with Sean. Though all it accomplished was to prove they were all lying to me and I couldn't trust anyone anymore, they believed it would make me forgive everyone involved. Angela signed away her parental rights and had to sneak about to meet the children like it was a crime, all because Sean wanted her to have no contact with her former family. Which is ironic. Originally meant to be her one true love, all of it was for nothing as they are divorcing. Though according to my parents Sean now wants nothing to do with any of them, they even had a son together. Angela didn't want to depart since their son had just begun kindergarten and she had started working again. He got a job offer and is leaving in a few months. Their arguments had been getting more intense for some time. 3 months ago, Sean told her he was done and headed off to accept the job. Though all this disclosure did was make me feel as though justice had at last been done, it was meant to make me sorry for Angela. My attorney has already advised me. The petition for restraining orders has been filed. My daughters and I have also had a decent conversation on everything. I warned them they would never see their mother or grandparents once again going forward. They seem good right now, but we are still working through it in therapy since I know this will be challenging for them. For the past 5 years, they most certainly have found it difficult. This ends immediately. Update 2. Hi everyone. I greatly appreciate all the attention and help. I truly appreciate all the wonderful blessings and messages directed towards my girls. Angela and my parents should show up in court in a few days. They have been issued restraining orders. I have blocked them on every platform, thus I have no idea how they feel about any of this. I have also advised friends not to talk to them should they try to get in touch. I have been working from home for the past few days and have added security around my place. I told the school where my girls go. I first wanted not to send the children to school for a few days, but I wanted their education not to suffer as a result. Their teachers are now monitoring them, none save me is permitted to pick them up after school. Things have so far been nice. I hope they will keep away once the restraining orders are issued. Update 3. Hello, here is a brief update. But we obtained restraining orders. Angela, my parents and Sean have to keep their distance from me and my girls for the next 5 years, else, they will suffer major penalties. The previous time I saw them, they appeared really hostile, hence I am maintaining all the security precautions for a period since I want to avoid any risk. Regular family counseling sessions are attended by my daughters and me. I think we will make great progress in the next months. To be honest, we have already advanced really much. Right now I just want my daughters to be happy. That is all. Kindly keep forwarding us your best wishes, we really need them.